I love preaching and teaching. I believe that God has called me to be a teacher to the body of Christ. But I can tell you there is no greater joy than to really pour your life into someone and then you watch them blossom and mature. Now, how did I come into this conviction? I thought I'll share with you my personal journey, how I became convicted about this. Sometime in 1991, that's a long time ago, sometime in 1991, I was reading 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 6 to verse 8. This was one of Paul's last letters that he wrote from prison. And it reads like this, 2 Timothy 4, verse 6 to 8. For I am already poured out like a drink offering, and the time has come for my departure. I have fought the good fight, I finished the race, I kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. Not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. When I first read this passage that morning, I remember asking myself a very simple question. The question was this: why is it that the Apostle Paul was so sure that he has done what he needed to do? Why is he so confident? You know what he's saying? He says, I've done all this. I've run my race. I've fought my fight. I'm now ready to go and meet my Maker. He's literally saying that. Why is he so confident? Why is he so able to say that I'm ready to now go and meet God? Can I ask how many of you here actually feel you're ready to meet God? You have done everything you're supposed to do. You're ready to go. Yeah, I thought at least a few. and that was exactly how I felt, And when I was reading that, I also asked myself, am I ready to go and meet God? Have I done everything I'm supposed to do? My honest answer at that point was, I'm not sure. I really was not sure. And then I asked the Lord, how is it that the Apostle Paul is so confident? And I remember that was the first time I heard a voice outside of myself. Some people call it the audible voice of God. First time. In my whole life, I only heard it twice only. This was one of those times. And the voice that came to me said just a few words. It says, Benny, look behind him. Look behind him. And the moment I heard that, I knew instantly why Paul is able to say this. You know why? Because when Paul looked behind him at that point, you know what he'll see? He'll see a whole string of Timothys, Philemons, and Tituses. They are carrying the torch after him. I think that was the key. And that was what started me on this journey of saying, hey, I need to be able to find my Timothys and Philemons and Tituses. Because at that point, I look behind me, you know what I see? I see nothing. I see nobody. Why? Because I was itinerating. I had traveling from church to church, preached from camps to camps and all of that. A lot of width, but no depth. It's like my ministry was 6 feet wide, but 6 inch deep. There was no depth in it. And it was at that point when I said to the Lord, I said, if this is really an area you want me to move into, then you send me the people. I kind of lay a fleece before the Lord. You send me the people who wants to be discipled, who wants to be mentored. Okay, I'm not going to approach anyone, but you send them to me, then I know it's you. And interestingly, within the next 3 months, God graciously sent me 12 young people who approached me individually. They come to talk to me, ask me to help them spiritually. And at the end of 3 months, I have a group of 12 young people from different churches because I was in a para-church group at that point. And that started me on an adventure of mentoring and disciple making. And ever since then, I've been addicted to this ministry of growing a person. And I'm glad to tell you, out of the original group of 12, several has gone into full-time ministry, and some are still faithfully serving in leadership positions in the church. I think that is the impact of mentoring and discipleship. Dawson Trotman, who was the founder of Navigators, once said this: it takes 20 minutes to an hour, to a couple of hours, to lead a soul to Christ. But it takes 6 months to a couple of years to bring someone to spiritual maturity. And I think that ongoing process of bringing someone to spiritual maturity is what we call discipleship or mentoring. Can I put it that way? So, okay, with that as a backdrop, and that's where I come from. That's how God brought me to this place of conviction that I need to be investing myself intentionally into some people. So what is mentoring? So now let's get into the technical bits a bit. What is mentoring? I think the best way that I can illustrate it would be if I take a go brake. Okay, imagine I take a go brake, I take a lead brake, and then I rub the two pieces of brakes together over a period of time. After a little while, at a cursory glance, nothing have changed, right? A go brake is still essentially a go brake. A lead brake is still essentially a lead brake. But if you look carefully, you discover that on the go brake, there's a little bit of lead. On the lead brake, there's a little bit of go. Now, that in essence is what mentoring is all about. You take two persons and you rub them together over a period of time. And after a while, a little bit of me will rub off on you. A little bit of you will rub off on me. Okay, the Bible puts it this way in Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. So by putting people together in an intentional way, we rub against each other. After a while, I will influence you, you will influence me. And that, in essence, is what mentoring is all about. Now, why is mentoring so important? Why do you even bother to organize this? The reason why I think it's important is simply this. One of the greatest crises facing the church today is the lack of leaders. Is that true? Do you face this issue in LSBC? Okay, probably LSBC not, but others are facing this issue big time, okay? But the greatest crisis facing the church today, I think, is a lack of leaders. But the key to leadership development is mentoring. Without mentoring, there will be no leaders of substance. See, and we need that. And without leaders of substance, the church will stagnate. And that is why it is so critical that we pay attention to this whole discipline of mentoring. See? So now let me give you two working definitions of what mentoring is. One is from Stanley and Clinton. I like this definition very much because it's very short, it's very direct, and it reads like this. Why don't we all read this one together? Mentoring is the relational experience in which one person empowers another by sharing God-given resources. Can you pull out for me some keywords that are here? Just shout it out. Yeah, relational. It's definitely a relational experience. Okay, it's not a classroom experience. It's a relational experience. What else? Empowering. That you should, every time you walk away from a mentoring time with somebody, you should walk away feeling empowered. You should not walk away feeling belittled. You should not walk away feeling guilty. You should walk away feeling empowered. Somebody has encouraged you and lifted you up. What else do you see? Yeah, it's all about sharing. Sharing what? God-given resources. Okay, I like this. I think simple definition in every mentoring experience I have. I think this is what's happening. Very relational, very sharing, very empowering. Okay, then I wrote one just to flesh it out a little bit. So here's a second thing that you can look at. Can we read this one together? Let's read this. Mentoring is an intentional relationship where a mentor identifies and facilitates the work of God in the life of a mentee to the end of growing him or her in spirituality, character, attitudes, and skills. Okay, pull out some key things. Yeah, the key is intentionality. Okay, I know that later on I'll show you that actually mentoring is can happen even without you knowing. I understand that. But at its best, it must be intentional. I must really want to invest in you. You must really want to glean from me. It has to be intentional. Okay, what else do you see? Okay, of course, it's a relationship, but where a mentor identifies and facilitates the work of God. See, sometimes we kind of overrate ourselves as mentors, thinking that we are the one that will reproduce ourselves in that person. Okay, that we are the one that is making him become like me. But that's not the goal, really. But I think in mentoring, at its best, what the mentor does is that he recognizes God's working in the mentee's life at this point. Are you with me? We are not trying to make anything happen. We are watching what God is already doing. And because God is already working in that area of his life, we become the facilitator. We become the one that that recognizes it, identifies it, facilitates it, so that the work of God in that mentee can really fulfill its purpose. Are you with me? Sometimes people don't even recognize that God is working in them. They can't recognize it. It takes a person of wisdom to come alongside, identify, and then facilitate it. And before you know it, that's the area that person will grow in. And in the end, the end goal is to grow him or her in those areas, spiritually, character-wise, attitudes, as well as skills. So coaching, teaching, everything is in there. Are you with me on this? Yeah, and I think this definition kind of helped to flesh out the inner workings of a mentoring relationship. But the thing I want to emphasize is this: we don't make it happen. We are just recognizing, identifying, and facilitating the work of God in the mentee's life. Or else we cannot overrate ourselves. Okay, so with that as a backdrop, now let's look at it biblically. Can I frame this all up in some scriptures? Let's see how the Apostle Paul does it. 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 4 to 6. 1 Thessalonians is a wonderful book to study on mentoring because here Paul actually addresses the people a church that he planted, a church that he has mentored. So let's take a look at what he says here. 1 Thessalonians 1, verse 6. For we know, brothers loved by God, that he has chosen you, because our gospel came to you not simply with words, but also with power, with the Holy Spirit, and with deep conviction. You know how we lived among you for your sake. And then you became imitators of us and of the Lord. And in spite of severe suffering, you welcomed the message with the joy that is given by the Holy Spirit. And so you became a model to all the believers in Macedonia and Achaia. Now, from this passage, we see a few things. You notice the gospel actually came to the Thessalonians in three ways. Okay, like you to notice what they are. Number one is through the word. Okay, that's proclamation, evangelism. And this is where the gospel actually comes to all of us through words. Is that correct? Somebody shared a word with us, either verbally or visually or through a tract or something like that. But the word of God came to us with understanding. Like Paul wrote here, for our gospel came to you not simply with words. In other words, it did come with words. But not only words, but he went on to talk about signs, which is power evangelism. So the gospel actually came to the Thessalonians in multifaceted way. One, through the preaching or proclamation. The second is through signs and wonders. When he goes on, this is where encounters comes in. So the gospel comes with the power of the Holy Spirit, bringing deep conviction, which is what Paul wrote also. With power, with the Holy Spirit, with deep conviction. And the third is through deeds, through the life of the people who bring the gospel to them. And that's presence evangelism, by being present. And Paul went on to say this. He says, you know how we live among you for your sake. So he didn't just preach, show some signs and wonders and walk off. He stayed with them. And then through his life, the gospel was established in the Thessalonica church. That's how it happened. It came through word, through signs, and through deeds. Okay, and in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8, in fact, Paul wrote this. Paul wrote, we love you so much. This is the heart of mentoring. If there's one verse that you could hold for mentoring, it will be this. We love you so much that we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well, because you became so dear to us. How many of you agree? You could hear the deep affection that Paul has for his mentorees. He has such a deep affection for them. He says, we don't just want to share with you the gospel, we want to share with you our life as well. Why? Because you are so, so dear to us. Okay, and he has deep affection for his spiritual children. I pray that all of us as shepherds, we have that same kind of deep affection for our cell members, that we actually treat them like children, love them, you know. And the way that Paul did it, how did he actually do all this spending, sharing with them his life? I think he did it. He gave us two metaphors in 1 Thessalonians. One is as a gentle mother. The other is as an encouraging father. Let me read them for you. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7. Listen to this one. He says, as apostles of Christ, we could have been a burden to you, but we were gentle among you, like a mother caring for her children. So that's one side of the coin. Very nurturing, very mothering. Then you look at the other side. 1 Thessalonians 1, verse 11 and 12. Now he said this, for you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children. How does a father deal with the children? Encouraging, comforting, urging you to live lives worthy of God, who calls you into his kingdom and glory. So how do you actually mentor people? If I could give you two metaphors, it would be this. One is like a mother, nurturing, caring. But the other side of it is like a father, challenging, encouraging, exalting, and challenging them. So you have high care, high challenge. Sometimes I think we tend to swing one end or the other. Either we are so high care, we got no challenge at all, or we are so highly challenging that we got no care. I think we need both. It's both soft and hard. So if we put on a velvet glove on one hand and sayang the people, but you put on a steel glove every now and then and you hammer them when they need to be corrected. Are you with me on this? So both a mother and a father. Now, what is the end result of all this spiritual parenting? And this is where 1 Thessalonians 1, verse 6 and 7 tell us this. This is the end goal of mentoring. Don't miss this. The end goal is this. You became imitators of us and of the Lord. And in spite of severe suffering, you welcomed the message with the joy given by the Holy Spirit. Until what? You became models to all the believers in Macedonia and Achaia. What did you notice here? At the end of all the spiritual parenting, from imitators, they became models. In other words, from being mentored, they all became mentors to others. This is the end goal of all mentoring. The end goal of good mentoring is not another mentee, it's another mentor. Just like the end goal of discipleship is not another disciple, it's another disciple maker. That is the end goal. From imitators, they became mentors themselves. Okay, so with all that as a backdrop, you got a biblical framework in which we can view mentoring. Are you following me on this? What are we doing? It's actually spiritual parenting. You're like a mother and a father to the person that you want to raise. And the end goal is that they themselves will become spiritual parents. That's the end goal of mentoring. Okay, with all that as a biblical framework, we now go down to the practical side of things. Okay, let me give you now. Firstly, let's get rid of the myths first. Okay, there are 8 myths about mentoring that I want to eradicate. Get it out of the way first, and then we talk about the real thing. Okay, here are some myths. Number 1. Some people think I can only have one mentor in my life. I think not true. The truth is that we actually will have multiple mentors in our life. How many of you agree? We actually will have multiple mentors. Personally, I was very privileged to have really some good ones. They really helped me to become who I am today. One of them was Dr. John Garlock, the late Dr. John Garlock. He is from Christ for the Nation. He was my teacher, mentor. I watched him, watch how he teach, and watch how he tells stories and all of that. I learned from him. As a young man, I carry his bag, all over Asia, where he conduct pastors' conferences. I just go there, sit there, carry his bag, carry Bible, watch how he does it. And then without even knowing, I was learning and imbibing all these things into my life. So John Garlock taught me preaching and teaching. I had another mentor in Irvin Rutherford. He's now in his 80s. I think he's no longer coming to Asia that much. He's now more in the States. He taught me world missions. He was my missions professor in Bible college. He was the first person to teach me about the importance of unreached people groups. And amazing prophetic guy, Irvin Rutherford. Then later on, when I was already a pastor, later I'll tell you the story, Dwight came into my life. And he's from the U.S., works for the Navigators. And so Dwight came along and he taught me, he gave me a love for discipling new converts. That the only way we can do responsible evangelism is that we don't just give birth to a baby, we actually win them. We take them to a point where they have the basics of the Christian faith. So Dwight was the one who taught me that. I'm grateful to Edmund Chan for coming into my life and when I was pastoring. He taught me the inner life issues. He really mentored me in the area of looking after our inner life. I never forget one of his phrases. He says, Benny, if you take care of the depth of your life, God will take care of the breadth of your ministry. You take care of the depth of your life, God will take care of the breadth of your ministry. Because most times we're so concerned about the breadth of our ministry, we neglect the depth of our life. Now, that's Edmund Chan for you. He taught me a lot in this area of the inner life. So we all will have multiple mentors in your life. You sit down, you think about it, you can think of a few, I'm sure. Because I don't think you can get to where you are today as leaders of LSBC, has it not been for some mentors that has already invested in you. Am I correct? You don't look very convinced, leh? Yeah, I'm sure. Studies, in fact, have shown that for most leaders, we will have about 6 to 8 mentors throughout our lifetime. 6 to 8. Who contribute to our life in different ways and in different times. Here's number 2. Second myth. Mentors must be at least 60 years old. Not true. Even though there are certain experience that can come with age, it is actually possible to have someone younger than us mentor us. It's actually possible. A lot depends on the mentoring issue. What is the area that you want to grow in? For example, if I want to grow in the knowledge of how to use social media to build the kingdom of God, I'm not going to ask the old folks among us. I'll ask the young people, because that's the mentoring issue. See? So watch this area. We don't have to be very old in order to be mentors. Number 3, my mentor is always right. Mentors are not perfect. They don't have all the answers all the time. In fact, some of the luminaries of our Christian faith, they also have their clay feet. I've learned over the years that every leader has their clay feet. As I go up the leadership ladder, some of the most respected ministers and pastors even among us, we have great respect for them. But when you get close enough, sometimes we discover they are nice from far, but far from nice. So we discover they all have clay feet. But that's all right, because mentors aren't expected to be perfect, but they're just people whom God has used. Okay, so wonderful. Martin Luther, for example, great luminary, founder of the Reformation. He had a bad temper. Temper wasn't too good. In fact, he was a little bit depression prone, which is why, sometimes the writings you can see. So people have clay feet. All right? So don't think that mentors are perfect. Number 4, a mentoring relationship is for life. Not necessary. Some mentoring relationships I find last a long time, but there are also others that last only for a season. Okay, mentoring is all about accountability. That's not true. In fact, what I've discovered is that the key focus of mentoring is not just accountability, like always checking, controlling, inspecting. But I find that the best mentors are supportive, encouraging, and empowering. See, we must, although the element of accountability will come in, the mentor's role is primarily to develop potential rather than to solve problems all the time. Are you with me on this? If you're mentoring someone, your goal is to develop potential in that person more than just solving problems all the time. We need to differentiate between the role of a mentor and that of a job supervisor. If you are a job supervisor, you focus on where all the weaknesses are so that you can get it right. But if you are a mentor, you focus on where the person's strength and potential is and help him to reach his fullest potential. That's the difference between a mentor and a job supervisor. Okay, and we do need to exercise supervisory responsibility sometimes, right? If you are a zone supervisor, that's what you are. You are supposed to help your cell leaders to solve problems in the cell. Nothing wrong with that. So there is a place for that. But my point is, as a mentor, we are more focused on where their potential is and help them develop that. Don't just solve problem, develop potential. the key focus of a mentor. He's always asking himself, what are your priorities and how can I help you? That is the mentor's posture. Okay. Now, number 6, mentoring will happen naturally. Now, I think there is a place for modeling, and later we can talk a little bit about that. But mentoring relationships at their best always come with the element of intentionality. I understand that mentoring can happen from a distance, right, from modeling. But if you really want to develop people's potential, you must be personal and get to know them intentionally. That's how we develop them. And this number 7 says everybody should be a mentor. Okay. I think it's yes or no. There are seasons. I think everyone can mentor to a degree, but not everyone should mentor. The reason is because there are different seasons in life where sometimes it's more suitable that you be mentored than you are to mentor people, depending on the seasons of your life. Are you okay with that? We all agree there are seasons, right? For us, for ourselves. Emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, we have seasons. Maybe just to make this clear, there are certain seasons in life. For example, there are some seasons when we are struggling. Am I right? We cannot even keep our head above water. In moments like that, you need to recognize that I am struggling. So rather than to say, who should I mentor? You better be asking, who can mentor me? Help me out here. Okay, struggling. Some seasons, we are not struggling, but we are just surviving. You are just keeping your head above water. Can barely, stay afloat. But you are just surviving season. Some seasons, we begin to stabilize. So we are stabilizing. Okay, now your head is above water, you are in control. That's good. In times like that, okay, you're stable now. Now you can pour out and not just take in. Then in some seasons, you begin to reach a place of where you are actually succeeding. Okay, doing well now. I have more than enough to give to others. Wonderful season. And then there are seasons when you reach a place of significance. Okay, you reach a place where been there, done that, you have reached a place of significance. Okay, what is significance? Is when the ministry is no longer what you do. The ministry is who you are. Okay, you become the very personification of your ministry. Take, for example, if I ask you now, think evangelism. Who comes to your mind? Billy Graham. Why? Because he's Mr. Billy Graham. Ministry is no longer what he do. Ministry is who he is. Think leadership. Who comes to your mind? Huh? SPF. Okay, yeah, he is Mr. Leadership now in LSBC at least. You will think of people like John Maxwell, people like that. Why? Because they are Mr. Leadership. Okay, so if you're in recognizing these different seasons, then I would say if you are in season 1 and 2, I think if you do any mentoring, it will be incidental. Okay, that means you do it because there's nobody else who could do it, or it's been thrust upon you. Okay, then it's incidental. But if you are in season where you are stable and you are succeeding, I think you should do it intentionally. You should be intentional about looking for people, investing in them. If you reach a place of significance, like all your elders here, I think the ministry is no longer what they do, it's who they are. Then what do? When you reach that place of significance, do your mentoring incarnationally. That means it is who I am. You mentor not out of what I know, it's who you are. And you mentor out of it. I think that will be wonderful. Okay, so in different seasons, you respond differently. And I would also say that you got to balance responsibility with seasons. Because sometimes we think you are, let's say you are a cell leader. You cannot say, I think this season I'm struggling. I'm just surviving and struggling. Therefore, I think I should just not do it. I don't look after my people anymore. Cannot. Because you have a responsibility. Are you okay? You reach a certain point, you can no longer just, based on season, say, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Okay, we have responsibilities too. But in the midst of all the responsibility, understand that if I am really struggling with certain things, I'm just surviving in my own inner life, then perhaps it's time to look for a mentor intentionally to say, help me out. Go to your zone soups and ask for help. Okay, and make sure that we take care of these things. Are you all right so far? You with me so far? Okay? All right, number 8. Teaching and mentoring is the same thing. I don't think so. Teaching may be a part of mentoring, but mentoring is not all about teaching. Okay, so people always ask, what's the difference between the two? I'll just give you a quick chart to look at this. In terms of teaching and mentoring, I think there are very distinct differences, and I'll run you through some of them. Teaching. Right now, we are in a teaching context. Okay, like a classroom, you have a teacher in front. I talk, you take notes, and there's a teaching setting. But in mentoring, it's not classroom style, it's coaching style. I sit down with you, I actually get into what's going on in your life. Teaching is, of course, teaching-based, but mentoring is about modeling. Okay, I'm demonstrating. Teaching can be one way, but mentoring is two ways. One is very material-centered, the other one is very person-centered. I start with you. I don't start with you start with the man, you don't start with the material in a mentoring setting. One tends to be academic, the other is apprenticeship. One is theoretical, one is experiential. You can see the contrast. One is very passive, right? Now, if I talk for another 10 minutes, you will really become passive already. So, but the other one tends to be very practical. Teaching has a much lower retention. If by the end of this session, you remember 10% of what I said, I'm a pretty good teacher, honestly. So it's true. But with mentoring, it's a very high retention. We remember what our mentors tell us. Okay, and one is very cognitive, it's more in the head, but the other one more with the heart. It's very effective. So put the two together. I think we need teaching, but at the same time, we need to have it modeled for us in a mentoring setting. Okay, so with that as a backdrop, you can see these myths, get rid of it, and then we get down to what some things that we can actually apply as mentors. Okay. Let me walk you through one more segment before we take a break. Would that be okay? Give me another 10 minutes. Are you able so far? You still alive? Okay, turn to your neighbor and smile a bit and then say, pat him on the back and just get going. Okay, now I show you one more thing and then before we take a break. Let me ask you, how many of you here, you have mentors in your life right now? Very good. Yeah, wave it at me so that I can get a gauge. Okay, how many of you don't have a mentor right now? Okay, about half. Okay, about half. I like to show you that every one of us have mentors already. Okay, everyone have. But it's just that we perhaps need a new perspective to look at this one. So let me show you a little chart here, and then I'll run you through this. There is a very helpful book that I wrote, I didn't write, that I read some time ago. It's a very helpful book. It's entitled Connecting. It's an old navigator's book called Connecting. And inside this book, there was one model that really is worth the whole book. And it basically talks about a spectrum of mentors. So journey with me as I walk you through this. Stanley and Clinton actually showed us that there are different categories of mentors, okay? And he divided them basically into 3 broad categories. The first category is what he called intensive mentors. And the second category, he calls them occasional mentors. Then the third category are passive mentors. Now, under each of this category, he has 3 types of mentors. And let me outline them for you. The first guy is a guy called the discipler. Okay, that's a discipler. And what the discipler does is that the moment someone comes to Christ, the discipler comes into his life. And then he walks that person through the basics of the Christian faith. I don't know if LSBC is still using the little booklet. Is still using that little booklet? Written by me. Okay, so that little booklet is one of those things that help to give the new convert all the basics of the Christian faith. So that's a discipler. He comes in at that point. Then along the way, you sometimes have another guy. He is called the discipler, the coach. Okay, we call him the coach. The coach is someone who so the discipler focuses on basics, all the basics, whereas the coach focuses on skills. Say, for example, I want to grow in my prayer life. So the coach will come along, and then the coach help you, pray with you, and then make you better in that area, whatever the area is. The third is a guy who is called a spiritual guide, okay, a spiritual director, if you like. Okay, so this spiritual guide, his main focus is on, he gives you perspective. That's what this guy does. So you're at a crossroad. Many times people journey along, they come to a crossroad, they need to make a major decision, don't know whether turn left or turn right. And that's when a person will come along and who is wise. Usually it's a cell leader, first person they will approach and say, what should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? And that's where you step in as a spiritual director and you help guide the person in their decision making. Are you okay with me? Yeah? That's wisdom. He focuses on perspective and wisdom. Then you have another category of people who is the occasional mentors. Now, to do this is really requires time. You need to get to know the person, etc. Then you have the teacher. In a way, I'm playing the role of a teacher mentor to you right now. He focused basically on knowledge. Then we have another guy, besides the teacher. Think about, sometimes I still prefer paper. He's a counselor, okay? The counselor is someone who gives you advice, okay? Give you perspective, advice. And the counselor is the one you go to when you're lost, don't know what to do. So you come to the counselor and he mentors you in certain areas where you need counseling. And then we have another guy. This guy is called the developer, okay? We call him the sponsor. And what the sponsor does, he focuses on development. Say, for example, if I know that Brother A here actually is a very good, he has a gift of teaching. So what do? I want to be able to open doors for him to exercise his gift. So if someone invite me to go for a camp, I couldn't go, I would recommend, what about you call this person, call that person, because these are people with the gift of teaching and preaching and all that. They just don't have opportunities. So my job is to be, as a sponsor to them, I open doors for them. That's what sponsors do. And I think many of us play this role also. As a cell leader, your job is to identify the gifts of all the people in your cell and give them a nudge in the right direction. So you're playing the role of a sponsor. Okay. Then you have another group that is called passive mentors. The reason why this group is called intensive is because to do this takes time, takes intentionality. But to do this is very occasional. It's not every day that you're sitting in a class like this, right? It's only occasional. Not every day you need to go and see a counselor or else you really got problem. Right? It's not every day. It's occasionally you need some counsel. Okay? And it's not every day you need another open door. So it's occasional. But you also have passive mentors. The difference is, this guy, at least they are intentionally wanting to invest in you. But these guys, they only focus on modeling. You know them, but they don't know you. But yet you are learning from them. Okay? And with this group, there are three categories, three types or so. One is what we call contemporary. Contemporary means this person that you are kind of looking to is still alive. Okay, they are contemporary. So they're still alive and you're learning from, like, you could be watching your senior pastor, but hopefully he knows you. Sometimes, we could be looking at some big gun, model, but you know them, they don't know you. But yet you're learning from them, gleaning from them. So they are your passive mentors. They model something for you, but he's still alive. And then we have historical ones. That means those who are dead already. Like, do you read A.W. Tozer's book? Then guess what? A.W. Tozer is mentoring you through his writings. You read all the different, J. Oswald Saunders, people like that. You are learning from them. But are they trying to teach you anything? Are they trying to mentor you? No. But they are modeling for you greatness, and you are watching them from a distance. So these are, some are live, some are dead, historical ones. And then we have a guy called the divine contact. The divine contact is basically a divine appointment that God allowed your path to cross. And because your path crosses with this person, your trajectory of your life can be shifted. Take, for example, a prophet that comes to town, lay hands on you, give you a word that broke something, and it takes you on a whole different trajectory. He's a divine contact. Right time, right place, right person. Okay? Other times it could be, it don't always need to be top down. Sometimes it can be just a fellow, say, cell member who happened to speak to you at a critical point when you're at a crossroad, and what they say changes your direction. So there are divine contacts that God sent along the way. They are not trying to mentor you, but you have learned from them. Okay, are you following me? Now, with this as a whole range of mentors, intensive, occasional, passive, let me ask you again, how many of you have mentors in your life? Now everybody has mentors in their life, right? But so when I earlier asked you, how many of you have mentors? Some of you say no mentors. Why? When you say I don't have no mentors, you're actually referring to which group? Probably you're looking at intensive or occasional, but you don't realize there's so many other people that has invested in you actually. So every one of us are products of mentoring. Just which type? Okay, now out of the three, three category, intensive, occasional, passive, which one is the hardest to find in the church? Yeah, of course. The reason why it's hard to find is because it's intensive. It's hard to find because it takes a lot of time and intentionality. That's why we find this group very hard to find in the church. We got a lot of teachers that are happy to teach a class now and then. We have counselors that you can talk to, no problem. Always people willing to open doors for you. But what is difficult to find is here. Now, let me ask you one more question. Out of these three, discipler, coach, spiritual directors, which one is hardest to find? Okay, let me ask, just for a show, how many think the discipler is hard to find? Okay, one or two, a few. Okay, how many think the coach is hard to find? Okay, more. How many think spiritual director is hard to find? Even more. Okay, this typical answer. But can I suggest to you, your answer actually reflects what you're looking for at this time. Is that right? Yeah, so it's true. We all, where we are in our own journey, that's what we're looking for. That's all. Okay. If you're looking for disciples, it's not because you're not discipled. It could be that you realize that this is hard to find people who want to commit to actually take people on the whole 6-7 sessions. It's hard to find. But can I suggest something to you? Many of you are probably looking for spiritual directors because you are reaching a point in your own development and growth where you're looking for your next season and you're wanting to break through that. That's very understandable. But what I like to do before I give you the break is this. I like the searchlight to fall on one person first because it's critical. And that's put the searchlight on this first guy, the discipler. And I need you to understand that this is such an important person. That's why he's right at the start of the whole spectrum. He's right at the start. He's right here because if the discipler did not do his job, the rest of us will have a hard time doing our job. Are you with me? It's very important to look at this person, because if he don't do his job well, the rest of us are going to have a hard time doing ours. Like, I can teach a person from now to kingdom come, put him through 50 courses if you want. But if he is not discipled, if he doesn't have the basics in place, the teaching cannot impact him, because it will just be knowledge, but no change. And one thing I've learned about Singaporeans is this: we are all hungry to learn, but not always hungry to change. We're all hungry to learn, but not hungry to actually change. We don't mind attending another class, but it will be very squirmish if people were to put his finger there and say, why then are you not doing this? We squirm. And this person, the discipler, is an important person, because if he don't do his job, the rest of us have a hard time. The guy is not basically discipled and really nailed down. We will have a lot of counseling to do along the way. You with me on this? Get this part right. And this guy is important. Why is he important? Is because, here's the thing. One of the key verses that we use for this basic discipling is John 15:5. See, I am the vine, Jesus said, and you are the branches. If you abide in me and my word remain in you, you bear forth much fruit. The rest of us here are dealing with the fruit. This guy here, he's dealing with the abiding. The role of the discipler is to make sure that this branch, this new person, is abiding in the vine. Because their ability to produce fruit is not based on what the mentor tells him all the time. His ability to change comes from going back to the vine. Does he need people to tell him? Of course. We all got blind spots. We can't see ourselves. So we need people to come along and speak into our life. But where is the power to change? It don't come from what the mentor tells them to do. It comes from them being able to recognizing it, then going back to the vine. That's the power for change. But if this part is disconnected, if the abiding is not there, finish. You can teach all you want, counsel all you want, speak all you want, but no power to change. So the role of the discipler is to ensure that this is happening. And that's why I think this guy is very, very, very critical. I hope you're following me on this. This is really important. We get this right, we'll get a lot of things right. Okay, with that, there are two key assumptions that I made about this guy's role. And as cell leaders, this is one of our primary responsibility. Put your finger on this one. Okay, there are two key assumptions I make. The two assumptions are this. Number one, we cannot effectively mentor those. Shall we read this one out loud together? We cannot effectively mentor those who are not properly discipled, because change comes from their abiding relationship with Christ rather than the discipler. Okay, change don't come from us telling them what to do. Change comes from their abiding relationship with Christ. So put your finger there. I discovered in the years trying to mentor people that no matter what I tell them, if they are not having their basics in place, nothing much is achieved. Okay, and we keep pointing them back to their personal walk with God. Put your finger there. Okay, then number two, the second thing is this, second assumption. Here's the next one. Can I get the next assumption? Those who have not been through the process of being discipled will have difficulties taking others through it. Okay, it's so important that they be discipled, given the basics. But the other assumption I make is that those who have not been through the process of someone walk them through it, they will have difficulty taking others through. Because it's all about process. Following me on this? It's so important. I grew up in a church in a mega church. And because it was a mega church, we don't really have people that will walk you through one-on-one or one-to-two. We all put in class because it was massive number of people. So everybody go through class. We sit through classes that talk to us about the basics. We all take notes. But it's different from someone actually sit down with you one-on-one and actually walk you through it. That's what I found. So if someone walk me through, then you give me a new convert, I have no problem walking the person through because I've been through the process. But if I've never been through it myself, I will have difficulty taking someone through it. That's what I've discovered. You know how I discovered it? Years ago, when I was still in national service, my last 6 months of my national service, they make me a physical training instructor, PTI. And my role was teach the soldiers how to swim. I know you look at this body, you cannot believe, but I tell you, this body has seen better days. Before that, when I was young, it was quite solid. So I was, that's a lie. The truth is, they make me a swimming instructor simply because I got this life-saving cert. So they said, okay, last 6 months anyway, you just go and park there, be a swimming instructor. So that's what I did. I was happy to take the job because as swimming instructor, every day you just show up at Seletar. There's a swimming pool there for soldiers. I just show up there 9 to 5, then book out. Nothing. Very, very good life. Until about 1-2 weeks before I actually finished, they discovered that there was a platoon of amphibious vehicle drivers. That means these guys drive tanks, that goes on land, and the tank can also go into water. They discovered that some of these drivers don't know how to swim, That means they will die, they go inside. They discovered they missed out something. So they say, hey, these guys may not know how to swim. You must make sure they know how to swim. They are about to finish in 2 weeks anyway, so you make sure that they at least know how to float. That's what they told me. And I said, okay. And so what we did was, we actually take them to the swimming pool, very simple. The swimming pool, they have this platform where you can jump, right? So my job was to get every one of them onto this platform. They jump into the water. Then the up thrust will push them up. And when they reach the top, they struggle. They touch the edge, they pass. That's it. Now you know the standard of the thing. Okay, never mind. But it was just a last minute, thing. So that's what I did. And I got these guys there to the pool. And then I said, okay, very simple. Officers say you just jump. And then you float up, you quickly touch the edge, you pass. But these guys, all primary 6, never very lowly educated and previous driver, they look at me, tattoos all over their body. They say, we wait for you outside the gate. You make us jump. Oh, I tell you, I was so scared. I went to the officer and I said, officer, they don't want to jump. And the officer simply said to them, you don't jump, you get confined for 3 weeks. Everybody jumped. They all jumped. And that's what they did. They all went out, they jumped, and then up thrust, push them out, struggle, touch. Everybody passed. Very good. Then I liked the experience of training, teaching how to swim so much. I decided I'd take a year's break, before I went for tertiary further studies. What I did was take a year break. I became a professional swimming instructor. Okay, then I advertise, get students, they pay and all that. Then, now let me ask you, when I teach my commercial student, do I treat them this way? No. I teach them, this is how you pull. This is how you kick. This is how you get a head up for breath. Then you put all three together. And then when they swim the frog style, they all look like frogs, These guys ask them to swim frog style, they all look like dogs. They cannot. Now, the other thing is this. If I were to ask these guys to teach their children how to swim, can they? At best, they do the same thing, sing or swim. But with my commercial student, if I ask them, teach your children how to swim, you think they can? Very likely they can. What's the difference between this group and the commercial student? Very simple. It's all about what? Process. They have been through the process. These guys have not. And because they've been through the process, it becomes repeatable. You can pass it on. So if I can show you a chart now, there are two ways that we can actually disciple our people. Okay, one is what we call the swim or sing approach. The other one is a show and tell approach. Okay, and with the sing and swim approach, it's not repeatable. At best, push them off the edge, see what happens. You either sing or you swim. Okay, but with the show and tell approach, it's repeatable because there is a process. One is ad hoc, the other is systematic. Do this first and do that. Then with one cannot be passed on, but the other can be passed on. And I think one reason why we cannot preserve our harvest sometimes is because we must develop the culture in the church of systematically, proactively bringing our people to the process of basic discipling. Get this done. Then the rest can come in. It'll be much easier. I checked many churches, we struggle with this. We must do responsible evangelism. So one of the metrics we measure now in our health of a church is how many people are going through this. So I can tell you exactly. Like last year, number of people that are saved, prayed to receive Christ first time, and the number of people who actually went through the basic discipleship. We must be able to nail that one. Nail that, and then the mentoring can kick off. Are you okay? Yeah. So I want to challenge you. Now you may ask, what if I've never been through and no one has ever walked me through it? Now, I told you earlier, I grew up in a church where nobody walked me through. So what happened was, one day I was speaking in an office fellowship in Parkway Parade, and there was a Caucasian gentleman that walked in, and he sat among them. So at the end, I was introduced to him, and I found out that he was. And I asked him, what are you here for? And he said, I'm here to look for pastors, businessmen that I could disciple. So all my antennas came up because it must be here to raise funds, actually. So I avoided him, but he managed to get my number. He called me one day, and he says, Benny, would you like to catch up? So that's where at first I didn't want to meet because I thought he just wanted to speak in my church or raise money and all that. But one thing I've noticed about him, every now and then he'll call, I'll pick up the phone and say, "Hi Benny, this is Dwight. I just called to let you know I'm praying for you." Then put down. What's that? Other times, hey, I just want you to know I'm thinking of you. This kind of thing. Because in Singapore, whenever you call someone, there's always an agenda. So this guy would just call, let me know he's praying for me and things like that. After a while, my gut began to come down. And that's when I decided to meet up with him. Then I discovered he's actually from Navigators. And he's really looking for pastors and leaders that he could spend time with. And after a while, I began to know that this guy is a discipler. So one day, I went up to him and I said, "Hey, Dwight, can you and your wife take me and my wife through the basics of the Christian faith? Just walk me through." He laughed. He said, "No, you're a pastor already. How can I do this to you?" I said, No. I really want to know the process so that I can experience it. And that's what I went through with him. So every off day on Monday, I spent an hour and a half with him and his wife, together with my wife. We went through it for a year and a half. And he taught me the basics of the Christian faith. I had to go and memorize 1 John 1:9, all over again. But I can tell you, nothing is new. Everything that we go through, we already know, of course. But at the end of that process, today, I don't need materials. I don't need a book. Just give me a napkin and a pen. Give me a new convert. I think I know how to give him the basics of the Christian faith. See, why? Because I've been through the process. That's the key. So if you've never been through, find somebody. Just walk it through with the person. Or go through it yourself. And then familiarize yourself with it, and you'll know how to take others through. But it is very, very critical. So I want to leave you with that and to challenge you to get the discipleship right, and then the rest can follow. After the break, when we come back, I will start to talk about the rest, which is what you are looking for. How do we get that done? Yeah. Okay. You all right? Okay, wonderful. Can we bow? We have a word of prayer and then take a break. When you come back, I'm going to pick up where I left off. Lord, I pray that you will take the things that are from you, chisel it into our hearts. I pray that you will give us a perspective to see mentoring in a wider canvas and then help us to come back to the basics. Put our finger where your abiding is. Make every one of us a woman who are abiding in the vine, because from there comes our power to change and to bring change to our people. So we commit this time, nail these things into our spirit. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Welcome back. Thank you, everyone. Okay. While we're waiting for some of the others to come in, I wonder if after the last session, is there one or two burning questions that could be on your like it to be addressed before we move on to the next option? There will be some time for Q&A later, but if we do have questions be burning inside the brain, you'd like to ask, you can while we're waiting for the rest. Anyone? Questions, feedback, comments up to this time? Anything you would like to address? Go for it.
Pastor Benny, question is, where do you see peer coaching or peer learning coming from? Because sometimes we may not have intensive vocational or SC PI course. So, we learn from each other, we look after each other.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. There is definitely room for peer mentoring, which is why I like creating leadership communities. So take, for example, you have your zone supervisor looking after a few cell group leaders, and the role of the zone soup is actually to create that leadership community of among 3 or 4 leaders, and I find that that's where they get the most peer mentoring.
I think that's pretty.
So definitely all for the peer mentoring. In fact, I would say that, say for example, ideally, we hope to see this thing called a mentoring constellation being built up. That means to have mentors above us. There are some mentorees that we are investing into, and then hopefully at our side, we have also mates that we that are journey with us. So the peer mentoring happens here. It's MATE, not MAID. Okay, so we all have mates along our side, we journey together. And this very good thing. So this is like a Paul above us. This is a Barnabas. This is actually a Timothy that is below us that we are investing into. And then you have Paul, you have the Barnabas, and you have Silas. By that I mean this, that there are peer mentors, and if possible, you get some peer mentors that are internal and some that are external. The internal ones are those that, let's say, your fellow cell group leader is good, and you learn from each other. But sometimes having external peer mentor is also good because they are outside the system and they are able to kind of see things inside that perhaps those of us are too involved and can't see. The Chinese have a saying that third party actually can see clearly. Chinese also have a saying: if you want to know what water is like, don't ask the fish, because the fish is too immersed already, can't tell the water from anything else. Too immersed. So it's sometimes good to have external meters. Thanks for that. Good question. Yes.
I have a question about the discipler.
Yeah.
So when I first became a Christian, I had a discipler, and I
Yes.
find that very meaningful.
Yes.
Relationship.
Mm.
But I think in the church setting, we don't have that kind of culture also. I find it very awkward to ask someone, even a young Christian, like,
Yeah.
can we go through all these things, like, can we like maybe spend time when we talk about scripture? I find it very awkward to do that and to approach that subject because we go through it. And it's a common thing in the church. Actually do something like that, yeah.
Okay, understand. So this is where we kind of build some of this. If we think that there are essential steps that a person needs to take towards their spiritual maturity, then build it into the infrastructure of the church in terms of steps that people take in their own discipleship journey. So if you can clarify the pathway, then it'll be easier for people to know, okay, this is my next step. These are some big steps I need to take. And it could include going through basics of the Christian faith as a next step. So take for example, the simple pathway, most of us also know, but it's just that we haven't really articulated it. But once it's articulated, it gives people a visual now, especially new people. Those of us who grow up in the church, you kind of know these things are all there. But for a new convert or someone who's new to church, don't understand church culture, they don't know any of this. So if we articulate it, make it clear, it will help everything. Take for example, the moment you join the church, that is step one, right? You're already part of this. You see this as your, the LSBC is my local church, so you already joined the church. Then next step probably is I need to go to a small group. That's your next thing. And once you're in the small group, I get to know you. I know whether you have the basics or not. The basics not in place, that's another step. And everyone probably has to go through some encounter because you use the what we have, the booklet. The last session deals with spiritual warfare. Then you have to go for an encounter to get cleaned up. So those are the next step. And if this pathway can be clarified, then people will know what's the next step to take.
Yeah.
So then it's no longer awkward. It's part of the journey, the discipleship journey that every person has to go through.
Big names.
Yeah. So hopefully that helps.
Maybe I can add to
Yeah. Please
back
do.
to like you want to get in touch with new believers, right? There's always new believers class. Then if you want to get in touch with the next level is primary foundation, they are always looking for teachers, and then from there you can single out certain people that you want to disciple. Or you can join the youth church. They are crying out for youth leaders all the time. And youth church need a lot of disciples, right? So advertisement a bit lah, yeah. And then of course if you want another in-depth, right, please join a young working adult cell and impart to them. Because now a lot of our young working adult cells are all peer mentoring each other. Yeah, so there's something. But I want to create more space for older, experienced believers like yourselves to go in and make a difference. Because after we are Christian for 20, 30 years, what's there to tell each other? Right? Sorry. Okay, I'm not appreciating. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's what we have lah.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. All right, we have some more time for Q&A later. So can I move on a little bit about, let's say, now we talk about, before we start the mentoring journey, what are some essential things that every Christian need to have in their life before they grow? And I've been observing this for a while, and I kind of bring it down to 5 essentials that we need to have in our life in order for us to grow, okay, spiritually, to grow as a Christian. And this is probably, as a mentor or as a cell leader, you want to make sure that every one of your cell members are intentionally putting these things into their life. So let me outline for you very quickly 5 essential things. Number 1 is this. I think everybody grows because, number 1, I would say practical teaching. Okay, number 1. Practical teachings. What do I mean by this? I think all of us, if you trace back your own life, all of us grow because we have received from people who take scriptures and make it applicable, make it practical. And then as we begin to apply the word of God into our life, that's how we grow. People don't grow because they accumulated knowledge. People grow because they apply whatever knowledge they have. Am I correct? So practical teachings are important. That's why never neglect the gathering of ourselves together. Like every Sunday you come, because there are teachers and preachers who will give you practical teaching that you can apply. And that's why in the cell group, we go to the cell group because we receive practical teaching. Number two is private disciplines. Just because we receive from teachers and preachers doesn't negate the fact that we still need to have our own private disciplines. So the discipline of silence, solitude, things like this. Having a personal word life, personal prayer life, and all that practical teachings are important. The third thing that they need if they really want to grow is personal ministry. Because if I've learned over the years that those who don't serve don't grow. That I can learn a lot, I can get a lot of practical teaching, I can have my own inner disciplines in place, but if I don't serve, I don't grow. Now, I know that in church there are many Christians who are doing nothing, but there is no Christian who has nothing to do. And we all have gifts and talents that we need to be able to use it to glorify God and edify others. And that's how people grow. It's because of involvement and participation, getting involved, serving others. So that's very important. So make sure that every one of our members have this in their life as well. They are using their gifts. Okay. The number 4 is what I would call providential relationship, and this is where mentoring comes into the picture. If you trace back your own journey as a Christian and your own growth, would you agree that there were at certain points in your life when your path crossed with someone who actually caused your growth to accelerate? It could be a pastor, it could be a leader, it could be a mentor, it can sometimes even be a kindred spirit, just some like-minded person that come into your life, and because of that, your whole trajectory change. You start to grow, escalate, and that's because they are what we call providential relationship. And this is where mentoring are really wonderful. So if you could be that providential relationship for someone else, it can cause their growth to accelerate. Okay, so that's an important one, providential relationship, and not just up and down, sometimes sideways. So this is where the mentoring constellation, if we have all 4 in place, you'll be in a good position. And the last one are pivotal events. The first 4 you can go and adopt, you can build it into your life. The last one is God's providence, okay? Pivotal events. There are things that happen. Sometimes they are happy things, sometimes they are sad things. Sometimes they are triumphant, sometimes they are tragic. But when those pivotal events happen, if you respond to it in the spirit, it will cause you to grow. If you respond to it in the flesh, it may cause you to become disillusioned. And it may cause you to walk away from the faith. And there are people who go through a lot of pivotal events like this. Are you with me on this? So when pivotal events happen, they are outside of our control sometimes. They either make you better or they will make you bitter. It depends on how you respond to it. Respond in the spirit, you better, you grow. Respond in the flesh, you may end up bitter. And it will hinder you on the life. So these are pivotal events. Now, how you respond during the pivotal events will be dependent, whether you respond in the flesh or you respond in the spirit, is very much dependent on whether you have the first 4 or not. Are you with me? If let's say you have the first 4 in place, you have received and have been applying practical teachings into your life, it will help you to handle when stuff happens into our life. Pivotal events come. So if you have your private disciplines in place, it will give you a stable foundation to stand on, even in tough times. And if you have mentors you can process with, it will help you to make all the right decisions and to be able to respond to it correctly. But if you don't have the first 4 in place, you got none of these things there foundationally. Very likely when bad things happen,
you can get lost. So I find that if you have all five in the believer's life, they are likely to grow. Most likely they will grow. If you sit down with any of your cell members and you find them floundering or not going the right way, very likely one or more of these elements are missing. And it's a good conversation to have about how to grow the Christian, how to grow our cell members. It's have a personal conversation with them to look at where is the missing elements. Sometimes you get a lot of practical teaching, but the truth is this, as Edmund Chan always said, truth does not transform life. Truth applied transform life. So perhaps they are not really applying, practicing what they already know. So put your finger there in the mentoring conversation. Put your finger there, and you will help them. Put your finger on the private discipline. Oh, this one I've learned. It doesn't get easier with time. It doesn't mean the longer I walk with God, the easier it is to maintain my private discipline. It's not true. I know pastors, missionaries, and all that who still struggle to maintain a meaningful, consistent, quiet time every day. How many of you agree? It just doesn't get easier. So put your finger there. It will really help them in their growth. When, of course, look at their personal history, how they're doing in that area. Put your finger there. If they're not serving, move them in. I think you'll help them to grow. I hope that makes sense. So these are five really important essentials that will cause every one of them to grow if they have it in place. So if you memorize it, it will help you put your finger when you have mentoring or discipleship conversations with your members. Can you remember? And they're quite simple. So keep this as a framework. Put this in, then you will find yourself growing as a result. All right. So as you journey with your people, the next, one very common question I get is, how long does a mentoring relationship last? How long does it go for? And so what I'd like to do is give you a little model here. Please take a look at this. And this is essentially what they call a mentoring life cycle. Okay, every mentoring relationship has a life cycle. And I will walk you through what I mean by this. Now, this axis, right, anything on the right means the mentoring relationship has started. Anything on the left means not yet. Okay, so typically, all mentoring relationships go through 4 phases. I'll outline for you what they are. Now, so let's say, for example, pastor comes to me and said, Danny, can you mentor me? Okay, if I don't know pastor well, what I'll do is, I may not immediately say yes, I may not immediately say no. Okay, but what I like to do is a dotted line. Okay, that means still testing water. This is what we would call a discernment phase. I'm trying to discern. He's also trying to discern, are we suited for each other? So what I typically do is say, hey, pastor, why don't we have coffee? And now and then, let's see where it goes. See how the Lord leads us. So I have coffee with him 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. After 3 times, you roughly know already whether can or cannot will this relationship work. But at some point, I'm going to sit down and say, Pastor, would you give me the privilege of journeying with you through this season of your life? Okay, that is a very poignant question. It's very carefully chosen. I say, Pastor, would you give me the privilege? Because the truth is, it's a privilege. If people want you to mentor them, it's your privilege, okay? Not the other way around. Sometimes we all overrate ourselves. Hey, brother, I want to mentor you. Lucky, okay? No, not quite like that. The attitude must be that if I get to mentor you, it's my privilege. Would you give me the privilege of journeying with you? That's what mentoring is. Mentoring is not telling people what to do. Mentoring is taking a journey with the person. I'm journeying with you for this season of your life, meaning which I'm not assuming we're going to go on forever. I would say that this is a season we're going through. Okay, by then, I roughly know his answer will be yes, because you've been already drinking coffee. Actually, you already started already. I just formalize it. The reason why, in the past, I don't use to formalize it. I don't want to formalize it. But now I do want to formalize it. Simply because the moment you formalize that mentoring relationship, you introduce into that relationship something that was not there prior. What you introduce is spiritual authority. I find that there is a spiritual authority that is established because as long as we are just drinking coffee, it's friendly advice. And you know how friendly advice is, right? If I give you friendly advice, you can take it or leave it. But if it is a mentoring relationship, the onus is on you now to take what your mentor says seriously and to weigh it before God. Now, it doesn't mean that the mentor decide for you, but it simply means that you have to take it and weigh it before God because it is a spiritual relationship. Does that make sense? And I find that the higher up the leadership ladder you go, the more the spiritual authority comes in. The only exception would be if I'm dealing with youth and young people, then I don't want it to be too formal. Because the young people, by virtue of age, that is authority is already established. But they like it to be more authentic, more real, more organic. So I can understand that. But for older folks, I think I would rather formalize it. And so that introduces spiritual authority. So after that, we go into phase 2. So this phase 1, discernment phase, we'll go into this bell curve. So we go into phase 2. In phase 2, we'll call it the definition phase. Okay, the definition phase is where we define the relationship. Like we will settle things like how often do we meet? And we meet, what are the mentoring issues? What will we talk about? What are we focusing on? Who initiates the meeting? Do you call or I call? Things like that. And we will define what the learning agreements are. Once that is done, then you go into phase 3, which is the developmental phase. This stage is where the developmental phase is when it's the biggest part of the curve. It's because this is where we spend the most time, where the mentor is imparting to the mentoree gleaning from the mentor. And this is where people learn. Okay? But at some point, it will start to taper off. Then we reach phase 4, which is a departure phase. At some point, we will have to say, we move on. So people ask me, how long does a mentoring relationship last? My response would be this. I think all mentoring relationships die a natural death. They all die a natural death. Okay, at some point, we will begin to taper off. And the important thing is when it is time to die, let it die. Because sometimes we hold on to it too much. We get too much significance out of the mentoring relationship. It's not healthy either way. Sometimes the mentor has too much at stake. He's like over-invested to a point that he can't do without the relationship. His significance is built up into it. Other times it's the other way around, where the mentoree is so dependent on the mentor cannot live without him. It's very unhealthy. In the end, it is God, not the mentors or the mentorees we have in our mind. So it's when it is time to die, just let it die. Now, we recognize that not all mentoring relationships die, they all die natural death, but not all die a positive death. Okay, sometimes it's positive, that means to say, maybe my mentoree has outgrown me, it's time to let him go. Or we have, whatever I have to impart to him, he has already learned. Then it's time to 下山了啦, it's time to say goodbye, go and do your thing, go mentor others. Other times it's negative. Negative means either because of neglect, or, one of us don't fulfill our commitment and the whole thing died prematurely. Then that's too bad. We have failed relationships too. Conflicts and things like that can happen. Okay, but whatever it is, when it's time to die, let it die. So every mentoring relationship goes through this same cycle. All of them do. Does that make sense? Yeah. So in phase 1, we actually say, come and see. It's like what Jesus said to the people who want to follow him. Say, come and see first. That's water. After that, we say, come and we decide together. Come and decide what you want to learn. Okay. Then you come and learn. This way you learn everything you can. Then when it is time to depart, then either you say, go and multiply, which means to say it's positive.
Then if it's negative, you go and die. No. Just go and multiply. That's a positive one. Okay, make sure that it's positive. And then we move on. We move on from there. So that's the mentoring cycle that we all will go through. Now, even in a normal mentoring relationship, I like to, at the end of 1 year or something like that, just ask each other the question, do you still find this helpful? And if it's helpful, then let's carry on. Yeah. So don't assume that people will still want you to continue. So go for that. Okay. So when you're going through this, and when you're going to this phase here, when you're trying to discern whether this is for you or not, can I give you 3 little pointers to help you discern whether is it suitable or not? Number 1, there are 3 marks of a good mentoring fit. Number 1 is you should have a chemistry that is natural. That means pastor talked to me, I talked to him, and then we find that, we actually can talk to each other well. There's no awkwardness, there's no uneasiness, and there should be a chemistry that is natural. To a point that one good test is when it is time to meet up with your mentoree, and then just half an hour before we are supposed to meet, the mentoree call you and say, Pastor, I'm sorry, I cannot come and see you. Then inside you should go, now I have to wait 1 whole week before I see you again. That should be the feeling. It cannot be, I can't see you. No need to meet. That's bad sign, It should be, you must look forward to it. That's my point. You must really want to meet, and you want to glean that person, and the person want to impart to you. So there is a chemistry that is natural. Number 2 is you should have communication that is very open. There's good sharing, there's openness, transparency, and things like that. And then thirdly is a commitment that is steadfast, so that we don't sometimes meet, sometimes don't meet. If you agree to meet, then make sure that it follows through. That's what built relationship. We were trying to build mentoring into our cell group system. And is it still okay if I walk to that board? Ken? Okay. So we are trying to build it into the system so that it can become something that is self-propagating. And so the model that we come up with is something like that. Let's say I'm a cell leader. I have all these people that I'm shepherding, right? You're shepherding all these different people. And how many of you agree that in any cell group, right, there are people who attend a cell for all kinds of reasons, ranging from nearest to my house to this cell serve the best supper, So the people join for all kinds of reasons. My best friend is there, whatever. And the role of the cell leader is to be able to shepherd all of them. So that's shepherding. And whether you like the person, don't like the person, it's your job to shepherd them. And we have to care for them, nurture them. But out of all kinds of sheep that can come into your cell, there is always the A's and the B's. By that I mean this. You can always find a 1 or 2 that is more hungry, more available, more excited about it. Then what do? If you're a cell leader, what you like to do is thicken your lines of ministry. You have a line of ministry to everyone, but you thicken your lines of ministry with A, thicken your lines of ministry with B. By that I mean, you take them outside of the cell time, and the cell leader then spends time with A and B. Does that make sense? He spends time with A and B. And very likely, A and B is going to be the next intern for this cell group. But this is mentoring. This is shepherding. This is mentoring. And if we do this intentionally, you will have a pipeline of leaders that will be developed over time. Are you okay with that? This is the critical thing. Now, then, of course, the third other element, there's always these 3 elements, right? Shepherding, mentoring, and equipping. Equipping can be done by specialists. They are usually done by specialists. Because not every cell leader is a good teacher. Not every cell leader is a good trainer. But you don't have to pressure yourself to be one. All you need to know is that there is a department in the church that actually does equipping. they are the best teachers and trainers you can find in the church. And the role of the cell leader is to then give people a nudge in the right direction and say, hey, you have been here for a long time, you still haven't done your basics, why don't you go for your basics class? And then he pushed them in the right direction. Then push them to the equipping first, they will do a better job at training than the cell leader can. So in that way, we use the infrastructure of the church to disciple our people overall. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And this is something that if we can do this, it'll be wonderful. When we first did this, right, one of the comments my cell leader says, Pastor, we are already so busy, just to look after all these jokers, already drain us out, Now you want us to do leadership development some more, not to mentor the A's and B's. And I don't know whether cell leaders feel that way sometimes. Then they say, wow, you make us do this, we want to quit. No. So I say, no, don't worry. What happened is that in the end, we had to ask, in the small group church model, when the cell leader is stuck, what do? They always refer upwards. And they refer upwards. That means to say, if cell leader say, I really cannot do this, I don't have the time to do this, it goes upwards, it goes to the zone supervisor. Then the zone supervisor now had to take over the A's and the B's and develop them. And then sometimes the zone supervisor also tell me, Pastor, we're also very busy, we also cannot do it. And then it refers upwards, usually end up in the pastor's table. And then we had to ask ourselves, it's a leadership call. It's a leadership call. Do we think that this is important enough to actually let the full-time staff members actually look into this area? Or can the zone soups find a way in which zone soups can actually do this? Zone soups are usually lay people. Can they do this? Because the key is leadership development. And mentoring is the key to leadership development. If we can make this happen, there will be a pipeline of leaders in the church. It takes a while, but we will get there. And because we are time poor, can I know in LSBC, do the cell groups meet once a week, once a fortnight, or once? And what's your frequency? Once a week. Okay, good. That's a good model, to keep it once a week. Okay, so we try to build this, knowing that everybody is time poor. How do we make sure that this happens? So how we did it was like that. So let's say you have a zone pastor, right? The zone pastor looks after a few zone soups, right? The zone supervisor. Then the zone soup looks after a few cell groups, right? So the CGLs are here. Cell group leaders are here. So for the zone pastor is, of course, he reports to some other, let's say the senior pastor. So for the senior pastor to meet with the zone soup is no problem. He can have a few zone soups, no problem, because they are full-time, so they could meet once a week, full-time, no problem. Where the challenge starts will be when they start to come down. For the zone pastor to meet with the zone supervisor, can be challenging because the zone soup is already visiting cell groups already. Then now on top of that, if he needs to meet up with the zone pastor for mentoring, it requires another time slot. So what we did was that we decided to build it into the system. So instead of coming out to meet on another night, during one of the cell night, the zone soups will go and meet with the zone pastor. Let's say, for example, your cells meet on Friday night. Instead of one Friday night a month, he goes and meet his zone pastor. So they don't visit cell for that week. Does that make sense? So I've not added another day to their calendar, but we facilitated the gathering for them to be able to have small group mentoring. Okay, on one Friday night. Then down the line is the same. On another Friday night, the zone soup again don't visit cell. He go and gather with his cell leaders. So once a month, the cell leader does not lead cell. He passed the cell to a core group within the cell group to run, while he go and meet with his zone supervisor. So I've not added another night, but I've built into the system. for them to have mentoring times. Are you okay with that? And the theory is this. If my cell leaders experience being mentored, they will want to pass it down. The A's and B's thing will start to happen if they have experienced it themselves. If they experience it, they will look for their A's and B's and they want to pass it on. And then the mentoring culture is built through the system. We call this structural mentoring. So the structure helps to create that mentoring culture. Then, of course, you can have organic mentoring. That is something else that people do because they want to. But within the structure, we built it in. And because it's on a Friday night, people tend to always show up because the time is very dedicated. So they always show up. And once you always show up, that community begins to build. And that's where the support starts to feel. You start to feel the support. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. So that's how we kind of built it into the system. And it has helped us over the years to then develop a pipeline of leadership. Okay, so that's where we are. My time is now 12 something. Okay, so I think this is a good point to pause a while and see if we could take some questions. And what time is lunch? 12:45. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do, okay? Based on all that we talked about so far, I would love for you to just take 10 minutes, process it with some people, because I'm sure you have a lot of things in your head. Talk to someone, find a few people, sit around, have a chat, and how does all this speak to you, and what are the questions that come up, and then after that you can ask all the questions you want before lunch. Would that be okay? All right, so now it's 12:15, so I give you 10 minutes. Would you find a few people you like to talk to, and then you sit around, have a chat, and then whatever questions you get, you generate, somebody record it, and then later we can ask it. Okay, go find a few people that you want to talk to. Let's have a chat. What are some things that has struck you? What are some things you stirred up in your thinking? Huh? Okay, 10 minutes. I'll call you back at 12:20. All right, thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt your conversation. I'll try and stick to the time. Okay. All right, this is a good time for you to ask anything you want to clarify, some feedback, comments, things that you would like to bring up. Be most happy to hear your thoughts. Okay, feedback, comments, questions. Go for it. Yeah, you remember that every time you ask a question, many people benefit, no? So to hear from it, yeah. So go for it, brother.
I think for all cell group, we have an issue of raising up the next cell leaders. So, like our own cell group, we have a lot of good core members.
Yeah.
In how can we encourage them? How can we nudge them a bit? Because they are so comfortable serving without title that they feel that this is what I do best.
Yeah.
Then how can we encourage them to step up to be cell leaders?
So let's say if they are already serving very well and they are doing a lot already in the cell, what would be your primary reason for you to want them to take up leadership? Is it because the cell group has grown big, it's time to multiply, but it's not multiplying? Yeah, okay. So you're wanting to multiply because it is time to multiply, but you cannot find the leaders willing to take up the next year. Typical challenge that we all face. When I first, we had this problem, and before one time it was so bad that the cell groups can grow up to 20, 25 people, but because everybody said, I'm happy to be a supporter, I'm happy to be a core member, I'm happy to do many things, but just don't make me a leader. And then later, people begin to use things like, okay, don't be a leader, be a coordinator. So we start to change terminologies without actually changing the function, so it's like 换汤没换药, that kind of feeling. And so decided that maybe that's not the way, let's not go down that path, or else if everybody is a leader, then nobody is a leader, so it get very mixed up. So we tried one thing that I thought was quite interesting, that I was so desperate. I went to all my cell leaders and I asked them, can you give me the names of your A's and B's? Because everyone can think of a few good people that potentially could be leaders, but they're just not wanting to take it up. So I said, give me the names of your A's and B's. And then I wrote them a personal invitation to all the A's and B's and asked them to come to my house for dinner. Cook them a dinner. Each time the dinner, we bring about 8 people, plus 1 or 2 other leaders, but you get about at least 8 potential leaders there. And then I'll cook them a nice dinner. Then after that, I'll give them this leadership pep talk, which basically tell them that leadership is good, leadership is amazing, leadership is so fulfilling. Because the reality is this, people need to be inspired. And I happened to come from a church when I was growing up. I come from a church, at that time it's called Calvary Charismatic Center. My pastor was Rick Seward. And when I was growing up as a young person in that church, it was a high, they were on a high. And you know what we were all waiting for? We were waiting for a letter, to come from the church office. And the letter will invite you, dear Benny, we will cordially invite you to join our leadership training. Wow, it's like, wow, 中马标 like that. You get the feeling, wow, finally my turn has come, Now I'm invited for leadership. Today I get a letter like that, you think it's a saman, But it was just that leadership culture was there. Everybody aspires, to be a leader, So we get the letter, we all go for training, and then slowly you get roped into leadership. So I decided that maybe I should try something like this. So I brought people together, cook them, and then I give them this leadership pep talk, tell them my story, and do this little exercise, like an object lesson for children. I take this cardboard, take a cardboard, and then I take them into my garden, and then I start to pour sand, on top of the cardboard, until after a while, the sand begin to fall off the edge of the cardboard. And then I tell them, this is what's happening to our church today. God is so good. He blessed us with people, all this sand that we had to take care. But how many of you know, after a while, they all begin to fall off the side, We can't retain them. The reason is because the cardboard is too small. This cardboard is our leadership base. We don't have enough leaders. That every time you want to be able to contain the growth, we need to have a bigger cardboard. And because of that, your cell leader has to inform me that you are the best people we have in the cell. And I want to invite you, to seriously consider if you would join our next leadership training. So we have leadership training regularly, right? So you say, would you like to just go and attend this cell leadership training? And attending doesn't mean that you have already volunteered to be a leader. And attending also doesn't mean we will appoint you. But you attend so that you know what cell leadership requires. And you will find that it is not as hard. It is actually very fulfilling to be a cell leader. I'm sure you've been blessed by your cell leader, right? Yeah. Okay, good. So usually we get about 40% success rate. 40%. It's quite worth it. Particularly if it comes from SP. It's an invitation. It's a little bit different from, the cell leader asking them to do it. I think when it comes from the SP, it does make a difference. SP is not here, so I make him do work. But you get my point. And it becomes something personal. Then, before I let them go, I always make them do a survey. In the survey, I'm basically asking a few simple questions. Question like, how long have you been in the church, have you ever considered leadership? If not, why not? And then they will give their answers. And the interesting thing is, some of the answers they give are legit. Some of it may not be legit. And those are not so legit, no, I don't feel adequate or something like that, or I have no confidence, then I know I can address it. Then I'll follow up and we can address it. But some of them is legit. Then I'm really going through a season where my babies are coming, I just got promoted. Then I understand. I park them first, but I know I can come back to them. Because I know the reason why or why not they will take this up. You understand what I'm saying, right? So we can have a way of following up. Then you build up a leadership pipeline over time. And this method did work for us in the initial stages, and as a result, it's after a while it becomes leadership culture that you are building. Yeah. So try. See whether by all means we try. Yeah. But nothing like a personal invitation. Yeah. I always remember this, nobody volunteer. They kena volunteered. So we volunteer them. So it's a necessary thing. And also one principle you want to follow is that don't say no on other people's behalf. Don't look at them and say, wow, this guy is so busy already, he's doing so much. Don't bother asking. Don't say no on their behalf. Give them the privilege of saying no to you. Just ask, would you like to attend the leadership training and see what happens? So we invite them. Dinner easier to ask than leadership training. So start with the dinner and then it ends off with the leadership training. Yeah.
Wow,
Thank you for that question. Very good question.
Very good scam, this one.
Why not one or two of your pilot test one or two zones and see whether it will work or not. See what happens. If you get result, everybody will jump in. Yeah.
Actually, the leaders can start thinking of the names. Then we can
Yeah.
compile the list and we send to SP.
Yeah. Nothing like a personal invite. Okay. Any other question, feedback, comments? Yeah, go for it.
Hi, Pastor Benny. I just want to know, how
Yeah.
do you have a proper closure
Oh,
to the
closure.
mentor relationship so that nobody is wounded?
Yeah. I try to build in, you see, it depends on the kind of mentoring relationship. The structural mentoring relationships, in a way, doesn't close. Because structurally, we are all still there. So as long as you are a leader, and I am now I understand you all don't have zone supervisors. So if you're a zone pastor that is looking after a few cell groups, that doesn't change. It doesn't go away. So in that sense, that mentoring relationships don't really die off, right? Because it's structure-based. So as long as you're a leader, I'm your pastor, we will continue. Yeah. This will apply if it is a more of a non-structural mentoring relationship. Because we have two dimensions. One is the structural one that follows the structure of the church. The other one is personal mentoring. Personal mentoring is not tied up to the structure. It's more based on the mentoring issue. It's the area I want to grow in. Then I look for people who could help me grow in that area. Then it's a personal mentoring relationship, organic, and it will end at some point. Either because I've learned enough, or I maybe God is moving me to mentor others. Then it's time to close it. So for those that are more personal mentoring, I would build in the question of like a review. Let's review this after 1 year. So at least after 1 year, we will have to sit down and ask each other, is this still helpful? Are you still able to continue to commit to this time? If the answer is yes, you can continue. But if the answer is no, you can always end without make it being too awkward. Yeah. But if it is negative one, that means either because neglect or conflict and all that, then it will die, because it's already it's an unhappy situation. Then if it is an unhappy situation and there is conflicts involved, then perhaps you need to, as a mentor, take the first step to go and seek reconciliation. And sometimes it's our own mistake also. I ever had mentoring relationships I have that the person shared with me that they lost a job, and then without her permission, I went to share with the whole group of mentorees that so-and-so lost a job. If you all have any opening, let her know. But it upset her because she never gave me permission to share with the rest. So things like that can happen where we kind of overstep our boundary. And if we do that, please take responsibility and make things right.
Pastor Benny, maybe I have a question. I think thanks for sharing. I think indeed it's good to know that mentorship is not long term. So I mean, to me, it's a surprise lah. So at least it give me the confidence that at least we can take on mentor because you won't have the burden that you have to take care of this person forever,
For life, yeah.
vice versa lah.
Yeah.
Then the other question I have is that how as a mentor or mentee you choose your mentee or mentor? What are the criteria you need to look for
That's a
so
good
that to
question.
ensure that the mentorship will be successful?
Okay. First of all, let's address this thing about people finding it hard to find mentors. It's common for people to say, I cannot find mentor in my life. Here's a principle that I want to leave with you that perhaps can help clarify this. The principle is this. The key issue in mentoring is the mentoring issue. Get it? The key issue in mentoring is the mentoring issue. Okay, by that I mean this. Many people say they cannot find mentors, but the truth is we have not defined clearly what is our mentoring issue. What is the area that you actually want to grow in? Because once you define that clearly, then when God gives you a divine appointment and your path cross with someone who could actually help you to grow in that area, you can recognize the person. But if you haven't defined it, even if you have a divine appointment, you may not recognize it. Okay, I'm not talking about structural mentoring, which is already like kind of fixed for you, who is your mentor and all that. But in personal mentoring, is when you're looking for a mentor, then I think it's important that you first define your mentoring issue. Okay, if you are able to write, for example, in this season of my life, I really need to grow in the area of understanding the word. Okay, let's say that's your mentoring issue. Then your eyes are open now to look for someone who models for you Bible knowledge and a great ability to handle the word of God. So when you see that person, you can straight away say, that's what I'm looking for. And then you can initiate a mentoring relationship. You can go and adopt the person. Are you following me? But if you don't know what you're looking for, then you cannot find anything. The best way I can illustrate it, if you don't mind, I'm not trying to stereotype thing, but just to make it clear, it's exactly like man and woman shopping. When I go shopping as a man, I'm very clear in my mind what I'm looking for. I know I want to buy a long sleeve shirt. I walk into CK Tang, I don't walk around the whole complex. I just head straight to the shirt section. I find a shirt I like, I buy the same shirt, 5 different colors. I walk out, 15 minutes, I'm done. My wife walk around CK Tang for 4 or 5 hours, come out and then say nothing to buy. Of course, you never even know what you're looking for. If you know what you're looking for, you tend to be able to find it and recognize it. Does that make sense? It's exactly like this. The key issue in mentoring is the mentoring issue. Sit down, write down what are the areas I want to grow in this season of my life. Then ask the Lord for divine appointment. Your path will cross. And then once that moment comes, have the boldness to walk up and say, I've noticed that you're so good with your children. Let's say I want to grow as a father. Say, you're so good with your children. I would love for you to be able to help me. That could be a start of a mentoring relationship. Okay, so hopefully that's important. First, the mentoring issue.
Have you ever said no to someone who approached you to be a mentor? Besides the the chemistry factor, what are your considerations to say no?
Okay.
How did you handle it?
Very good
And-
question.
Yep.
Okay, again, in structural mentoring, you don't have an option. It's built into the structure, and we make time for it to happen. And if we cannot find the time, if we are really that time poor, then we have to think about ways in which we could double up and, or, save time for each other. But let's say in other mentoring situation, are there times when I actually say no? Yes, there are times. So apart from chemistry, it will be capacity. Do we actually have the time to give to this person on top of everything else that we are doing? Because if the reality is that we don't have the time, do not make commitments that we cannot fulfill, because it's actually it's better to say no than to say yes and then don't follow through. I think it makes the whole mentoring experience very negative for the person. You commit to meet, but you always cancel because you can't make it, this, that, then it's not very good. If not, cut down the expectation. There are times, yesterday someone texted me after a session somewhere and then said, I really want to grow in my teaching, can we spend time together? So I honestly tell the person, perhaps we can start, if you really have a question about teaching or what, you can drop me a text and then I will respond to you. So I cannot commit to another meeting or commit to another relationship. Then I later may disappoint him. I rather that you drop me a text and when I'm able to, I'll respond to you. So that's where we can at least start. Yeah. Other times I will just say, I'm so sorry, I just don't have the capacity to do it. Yeah, it's totally okay to do that. The other factor that will make me decide is gender. Yeah. We make it a point never to mentor cross-gender one-on-one. Yeah. Group mentoring, okay. Couples mentoring, okay. But no one-on-one mentoring across gender. Yeah. Avoid that at all costs for longevity. Yeah, it's just safe and wise to do that. So those are some reasons I would say no. Yeah. Nothing wrong to say I'm unable to at this point. Yeah, totally okay. 2 more minutes before lunch. Any other question you have? Yeah, go for it, sister. Hey, Isabel. I thought you're in Japan.
Hi, Pastor Benny. Okay, I have a very sharing some grievances also a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so like for me, I am a youth leader.
Yeah.
I have just stepped down as a young working adults leader.
Yeah.
So all I'm hearing from you right now is a lot top down, where the change has to happen on the top. But now there is an issue that there is a gap where we see more retired people who are coming out back into leadership after retirement, and then there are like young people who have not had families yet, and then there's this huge gap of people who are not serving, right? So just riding on Andy's question, then if we can on the ground, because right now we are doing a lot of peer mentoring.
Yeah.
Like, what are some of your advice that we can? If I can't influence the top to start serving, is there something that I can do on the ground to like maybe shake things up? I do not know. So this is my question.
Yeah. So the missing gap will be the young families.
Yeah.
Yeah, young families, because that is the most challenging season of the life journey, in life transition, because that's when they are busiest and all that. I forgot to mention that I specialize in easy questions. This is by the way, this problem, Isabella, is not faced just by LSBC, and it's actually faced globally. That there is everywhere I go, this is the most challenged group, the young families, because the demands on this age group is very, very high now because of high cost of living. So they need to build their careers, and also, their children are coming during this season. So it is a challenging time. What I typically would do, and this is how we were dealing with this, I asked the people who are overseeing this group, sit down with and encourage every young family. They sit down and they decide for themselves what are the non-negotiables that they will not compromise during this season of their life. Sit down and really write out the non-negotiables. What are some, by non-negotiables, I mean this. What are some things that if it is not there in your life, it will be detrimental to your spiritual health? What are some things here? Define those things. And define it within the season you are in. And once you define that, you put that in first, then you can no longer say, oh, I don't know time. You make time for these non-negotiables. And some of them include, of course, they will, then it's up to them to define. It's like, don't forsake the assembling of yourself together. I know that if I stop gathering with the church, I will definitely backslide. If I'm not part of a life-giving cell group, I will backslide. If those things are to you non-definable, put them down. And many of them will find that serving is probably quite low, had to go down the priorities simply because that's the season of their life. And if that is the case, we must also be prepared as a leadership to hold their hand and say it's okay, and not make them feel like guilty for not participating at a time like this. But to be able to say, I'm journeying with you through this season, and then make sure that those non-negotiables are there. And it will help them to feel safe and feel supported. And once they feel safe and supported, I find that slowly they all will come back. And once the kid reach primary school and all that, they will come back. And that will be your next generation of leaders already. And they will come. And we had to go kind of out of the way to make them feel supported during this season. So we did some of these things to try and give assurance to our young families, we are with you and not against you in a time like this. Take, for example, that's a season when they desperately need parenting. They need to go through parenting course, things like that. But they can't do it all together because somebody has to look after the children, the baby. So either husband come or wife come, but they never get to actually sit down and work things out together, because of that. So we decided the only way we can make sure that they get that is on a Sunday. Only way. So we actually asked them to come to church, park your children all in the Sunday school, then both of you no need to attend service, just go and attend this 7 weeks of parenting course or whatever, and support them that way. Offering will come down, but it's okay, because they're not in the service. But it's to show them in no uncertain terms that we are supporting you through this season. And if they raise their children well, it's future of the church. They need marriage enrichment during a time like this because they fight a lot at home as young parents. So things like that, we go out of the way to show that we really love them, care for them, and support them through this season. And they will all come back, I suspect. And we do need the older ones to serve back and be prepared to go down, and instead of peer mentoring, let the older ones actually go in and lead the cell. Our young families got revived because my pastor, one of my adult zone pastors, was prepared to be a cell leader to them and start groups for young families. Because we know if we lose them, we are going to lose the next generation already. Yeah. So those are some things that we will go out of the way to show support. Cannot, I think depends on the context of the church. Singapore is a very busy city, quite scary. Yeah. 很好. Thanks for those questions. They are very thoughtful. Yeah. All right, thank you, everyone. Welcome back. I enjoyed the question and answer time because you asked some very, very good questions. But I want to cover one other aspect first before we open it up for time of interaction. I wanted to talk to you about the end goal of all the mentoring. What is the end game, I often have people ask me, so when you take on someone for mentoring, so what are you working towards for that person? So generally speaking, especially in leadership mentoring, I would ask for 4 things that I'm kind of shooting for. So if I could show you a simple slide here, there are 4 key elements when we talk about the end game of mentoring. What are we mentoring towards? So can I show you a little picture here, put it easier for you? Okay. So when I take a person and I'm going to mentor the person, so what am I trying to do? I think first and foremost, we are trying to give the person a spiritual orientation. That's the first thing we are working at. We want to give the person a spiritual orientation. You see, every single one of us here, we have a lens through which we view life. Sometimes we call it a worldview. It's the way we filter everything through. And every one of us have this inner compass. And it is out of this orientation, whether it is earthly or whether it is spiritual, this is the lens through which we view everything. This is how we make decisions, where every priority is set based on a spiritual orientation. By that I mean, if you have a spiritual orientation, then everything you do, every decision you make, every priority you set is based on your understanding of who God is and what God says. Is that okay? It's based on the ways of God, the Word of God. That's your orientation. And on this basis, you make all your decisions, you view everything. And it's not just a spiritual life that need to have this spiritual orientation. Even our physical life, our family life, our financial life, our professional life, everything is filtered through this orientation. So when we are discipling a person or mentoring a person, that's the thing we are shooting for. Give the person a spiritual orientation. When they first come to Christ, they come from the world. Everything is filtered to a worldly orientation. And we are trying to take them to this place where they view everything through who God is, what God says. Are you okay with that? And once your spiritual orientation is changed and discipled or mentored, then that will result in the next thing, which is value change. See, a lot of times until the compass inside is being mentored and the Word of God, the ways of God becomes the orientation, the value is still worldly. But once we change the spiritual orientation, then we can begin to experience value change. And value change is where we say discipleship is done from the inside out. If we skip this part about value change, you may change the behavior on the outside, but you haven't changed the values on the inside. And one classic example of this is, let me illustrate that for you. If you look at Ephesians chapter 4, verse 28, there is a verse there that really illustrates for us the power of value change. And many times I find that in our mentoring, in our disciple making, we often don't really shoot for value change. Okay, let's take a look at Ephesians 4:28. It reads like this: anyone who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work, right? Doing something useful with his hands, that they may have something to share with those in need. So when you look at a verse like that, you'll find that there are 3 actions inside, right? You can find the 3 key actions. One is that you should stop stealing, right? Then what's the next action? Start working. Then what's the next one? Then you can start sharing. Okay. So those are the 3 actions inside there. So let's say, for example, Ruth has been stealing. Okay. This is an example only. So Ruth has been stealing. So if I'm discipling her, so what do? I come to Ruth and say, Ruth, you should stop stealing. Now that you're a Christian, how can you steal? Every time take the pens, take the stapler, everything take home. That's stealing. Stop this. Stop stealing. Then instead, what must you do? Start working. So because Ruth I'm discipling her, then she will say, okay, I'll follow. So she stopped stealing and she start working. So has she changed? Yes, in some sense she has changed, at least in terms of behavior. Her behavior has changed. She stopped stealing, she started working. But does that mean that she will start sharing? Maybe not, Why? Because maybe the insight hasn't changed yet. What do I mean by that? If a person is stealing, you must say, why? What is driving the person to steal in the first place? It's because there is a value that is in her. Maybe the value is greed. So because there's greed, she starts stealing. So now I'm stopping her from stealing, but even though her action has changed, now she's working. But actually the value hasn't changed. She's still greedy at heart. Are you with me? The only change is that now instead of fulfilling the greed through a criminal way, she now make it legit by working. But it's still fulfilling the greed that drives her. The value hasn't changed. And until greed has been changed to generosity, she may not start sharing. Are you following me? The behavior has changed, but the value has not. And a lot of our mentoring and discipleship, we tend to just go for the action. So as long as the person's behavior is being modified, we think that we have discipled the person. But actually what we are shooting for is greed. Until greed is changed to generosity, then there's a value change. Then perhaps the person may start sharing. Are you following me? And the thing is, why would a person change from greed to generosity? It's only because this is who God is. This is what God says. Because the Word of God challenges us. It's more blessed to give than to receive. So it becomes the orientation. Once it's changed, then the value can change. You get me? So that's, I think, what we are shooting for. We are shooting for value change. But for value change to really gain traction, we need something else. And this is where the third circle is accountable action. Accountable actions is what brings traction to value change. I can say my value have changed, but until I can see accountable action, that may not have happened. The value change don't gain traction. So accountable action, therefore, becomes important. Okay? And one of the pitfalls, I think, of modern discipleship is that people are often hungry to know, but they are not hungry to change. So we have a deep hunger for knowledge, but we may not be hungry for change. So I find people wanting to master the Word, but they're not mastered by the Word. We all want to know the Word of God, but we don't encounter the God of the Word. Many people are learning, but not growing. So we are gathering information, but not really experiencing transformation. We know more without necessarily doing more. So truth does not transform life, but truth applied transform life. So what makes mentoring so powerful is therefore this element of bringing in this element. Earlier we talked about this, right? It's not all about accountable action, but accountability must be there. Because failing which, the value change don't gain traction. So the next thing therefore is accountable action. We can sit in a session like that and you probably forget 80% of it by the time it's over. But in a mentoring situation, I think you remember a lot more. And because there's accountability built into it. Okay? And remember this saying, we had this saying, all teachers know this saying, what I hear, I forget. What I see, I remember. What I do, then I understand. When I understand, I change. You see that? What I hear, you tend to forget. But what I see, I'll remember. That's why we have always a PowerPoint, so that you can not only hear, you see. But what I do, then I understand. When I understand, I change. What does this tell me? It tells me that change don't come out of hearing. Change come out of doing. So I understand my orientation is shifted to who God is, what God says. That's my worldview. But that can lead to value change. Value change gain traction through accountable action. So in all mentoring relationship, we're looking at all this. And this, in the end, will then end up with what we call life transformation, which is the end goal. Okay, end goal, life transformation, where people's lives are being transformed from the inside out, not outside in. Now, our tendency is, especially when we raise our children, we tend to focus a lot on this one, accountable action. So we make sure you go to Sunday school, make sure you go to youth group, make sure you go this, go that, go this, go that. They will follow for as long as they have to, but the moment they grow up, they may stop everything. Why? Because it could well be that we are shooting for this without actually whether or not there is value change. And that value change is not going to happen until this compass is changed. So in all mentoring and disciple making, we are putting our finger here for a start. Where is your orientation coming from? Is it spiritual or is it still worldly? Is it based on who God is and what God says? Or is it just based on whatever? So if you want to remember, then this really is the compass. This becomes the convictions. This becomes the conduct. And this really is Christ-likeness when we are finally transformed. So that's where we are shooting for when we talk about mentoring. So what am I mentoring towards? I look at these 4 things. In the journey that I take with the mentorees, we're looking, make sure that the spiritual orientation, the compass is recalibrated. Make sure that we are actually shooting for value change, not just behavior modification. But value change, if it is real, you can see accountable action that comes with it. And this will then gain traction for value change and ultimately lead to life transformation. So that's what we're shooting for. So don't just go for action. That sometimes can be behavior modification. But go for the insight. Let it be done from the inside out, not outside in. You okay? Are we clear on this? Yeah. So I don't know, in your own journey with your people, do you have a framework in which you are kind of journeying with the person, and you think back and think about whether or not do you see people's value change? And once you can see it, that means you're doing something that is right. Okay? And then see how that turns into accountable action and all that. I think this is something for us to really process so that we can see whether in our own mentoring and disciple making, are we doing it from the inside out or from outside in? Okay, so here's what we do. It's already after lunch, so we break up at this point for a while. And now it's about 2 o'clock. I'd like to give you 10 minutes just to reflect a bit on this and tell each other what's your experience like in your own journey of journeying with your people. What do you see? Okay? And then whatever questions you have, let me know. And then we'll talk further after this. Is that okay? All right. 10 minutes. I'd like you to go into smaller groups just to think. All right, talk to each other. Now, after lunch, better don't you sit there and listen. You talk to each other, okay? All right, go for it. Take a look at this. Tell me what you're seeing, what you're hearing. Okay, in your group, go for it. What do you see? What's your experience? What's your journey like? Start with your own reflection of your own journey. That's it, right? All right, turn around, find a few people, have a chat.
And then office is still focus on all I know and as well is to thank you for very good. I don't know sometimes I do but like and in terms of I don't this was to change it up with all this like but also feel like I've changed the practice or first so why I don't know the talents so you pretty so the more civilian so actually there's more strength, right? She was thinking about maybe on my skills that maybe so people that's not they're on girl but I feel so makes because it means okay complexity I'm a sergeant I don't know I make basically but that's connect I do this to what I did this that we did off the screen thing okay great change yeah, it's a purely word. Ich guess it's nice. That's cheap. It's flat. You take up with it. Was a bit. I got this one. Then that's the scroll. You can't eat fast because nothing. Especially you know, say the common that happens. It's really before us. I think it's the way I measure it. Doesn't need that stuff. And it's not that it's original. So they sound like they can see the whole thing. So and that is this. No, that's not about the how to so I don't have to be nice or down to research actually back it up with things that we have going on. That was this doesn't work. So actually I mean like it was very much up but basically that was yeah the complicated it's still like you said this is about this thing over the still jumping to the art was is able to you know but that's how actually like what's over right that which is probably that's the point yeah let's add something that I'm cheap because person quite like she I'm less this the best such a thing but it's just Easter now vacation when the side is the audio the medicine I'm saying I'm sure like oh that is very good how much but it's still that much I think like it's still make any difference so it's with the down but on the other which is that it's when you get that one there's the call. That's another detail. I should put some as my shoes on for the office, but shift out. I think like lots of I think lots I think some is to like less previous this one but I think like this I don't know I know this since I put this in this what you mean was so like not really less of the same as a sum of self-fix that you really so remember right about the change this guy it's not easy enough I think it's everyone they don't share what was but was very I think that I think smart person well it's still think that I was one of these which but they say it's really stuff yeah that was actually good that's actually a long story I probably saw
Christian, then the spiritual orientation cannot change. A bit weak, right? Yeah. So that is the foundation. It has to be that, right? Yeah. Yeah, but a lot of people don't go there. You are
Okay. Good. Thank you for your sharing the intensity of it. Okay. What are your thoughts and reflection? It'll be interesting to hear. What's your experience like in your own journey with your cell members and all that? Do you find that these things are in play? Okay, question, feedback, comments. Now I got Pastor Lawrence here, so you can ask anything you want. Now I take away the clause. I don't just deal with easy question. Now the hard ones can come. Okay, go for it. Okay, what are your thoughts and your thinking? Question, feedback, comments. This is a good time. Go for it, brother. Behind you.
No, I don't need it.
Yeah.
This is for me. I think whatever they have shared, when it comes to mentoring, for me, I think the initiator plays a very, very big role. In the mentoring relationship, it's the mentee who wants something from the mentor.
Oh, okay.
Whereas in the structured style,
Correct.
is usually the initiator is not the mentee.
Yes.
So the influencing from the spiritual orientation, the value change is very difficult because the so-called the one who is supposed to benefit from the mentoring relationship doesn't want it in the first place. It's some structure thing or someone going to them and say, I think you need some help in this.
Okay.
Let me offer it to you or whatever the case. So I think the level of change and how successful mentoring is really depends a lot on the initiator and the drive behind it, which I think the structure side difficult to get it done because it's a structure and not coming out from someone themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
But you make a very insightful point, which is this, that if you, earlier on we talked about structured mentoring, right? It follows the structure of the church. So you mentor the ones next level down and all that. It's correct to say that when it comes to leadership structuring that follows a structure, it's better for the mentor to initiate, then for the mentoree to respond. Because in leadership mentoring, right, you cannot kichiu and you cannot say, I want to be a leader, so mentor me. It doesn't work that way. It's the leader who picks who he wants to mentor for leadership. But when it comes to personal mentoring that is outside of the structure, it's correct. It's best when the mentoree initiate and then for the mentor to respond. Because you are hungry to grow in certain area, so you chase after the mentor who can help you to build that area. So you're absolutely right about that. Now the thing is, for some when you go from the structured approach, right, there are some people who are actually not ready to want to, or they are not in a place where they want to grow. And I think we have to accept that. You cannot force a person to grow, right? If I'm not hungry, you can't make me eat. So it's a bit like that. And we have to accept that there are seasons in people's life. Okay, but so here's my take. I always have this framework in my head. Right? We should shepherd everybody. You don't have a choice. Anyone that God sends to the church, it's our responsibility to shepherd them. We must care for them, we must love them, we must reach out to them and all that. We shepherd everybody. We equip as many as are willing, but we only mentor a few. Can I say that again? We shepherd everyone, equip as many as are willing, and we mentor a few. Because some people are mentorable, some people are not, because they're not ready yet. But even if they're not ready to be mentored, we should still nurture them. We should still teach them. But we may not be able to really see this whole process happening as deeply as we would like to. But nonetheless, how do you mentor this spiritual orientation? It's always helping them to know who God is and what God says. So we go back to the Word of God. So every time they attend a church service and pastor preaches, they are being already, their spiritual orientation is being adjusted. Are you with me? It's being adjusted all the while. Every time they attend a class, foundations class or whatever, their spiritual orientation is being calibrated. It's already happening, but it's just that it hasn't. In order to see value change, we need mentoring relationship. But they must be willing, they must be mentorable. Yeah. But we teach, we shepherd everyone, we teach, equip many, but maybe only can mentor a few. And those few, very likely to become your future leaders. Yeah. So in that way, I think we get our expectations more moderated. Or else we pressure ourselves too much. You don't try and mentor everyone in church. It won't. It's not going to happen, I think. But we should shepherd everyone. We should teach as many as are willing to be there. But we can only mentor a few. I've come to accept that. So for mentoring goals, we only measure until cell leader. That's it. Anything beyond cell leader, to me, is bonus. So through the structured mentoring, we built a mentoring culture by going down the line until the cell leaders. Because my thinking is that if our cell leaders experience being mentored, they would want to pass it down. Then when it happens, it's organic already. I hope that helps so that you don't feel like don't feel so pressured. You must mentor everyone in the cell. It will be too much. Yeah. What do you think, Pastor? We need your input because you know the context of the church best. Yeah. Anyone else? Your thoughts on this? In your discussion, anything? Yeah. Go for it, sister. The mic, right at the back.
Sorry, not so far. Hi, Pastor Benny. Okay, I would just like to ask regarding this concept that you just shared, right? Okay, so I think that it's very good and ideal if we can have this format when we make decisions to go by spiritual orientation first, leading to value change and accountable action. I want to ask about the accountable action part, that because I hold the school of thought that sometimes not everything you can be convinced, so sometimes you just do first, and in the doing, maybe something can change. So I would like to ask, is that okay? More in a cell setting, because I think we cannot enroll everyone for everything all the time. So is it okay to just do first, and then we see whether things can change from there? Maybe in the doing, things will change. Then if it is okay, my second question is, because this is the third layer, right? Because ideally it should be spiritual first, then value, right? So if we just do the accountable action first, then what are the things that we should look out for to know that we must go deeper than that already? Yeah, like what are things that we should look, because I think, at least for myself, sometimes we just do the action first. We may not align with everything, but we just do first. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
Especially in a context like yours, where it's community penetration, for example. Sometimes you cannot wait until you have a seminar, explain everything about community penetration, then you go and knock on doors. Sometimes when you just join a cell, everybody's doing it, you just do first. Then in the doing, you kind of, you figure out that, this is why we do what we do, So the only thing about people doing stuff is just to remember that ultimately, until they know why, the doing may not be as sustainable. So you can start with the what and the how and just do it first, but until they get to know why, it may not be as sustainable in the long run. So I think all three need to kind of find convergence for a person to be truly into it, So maybe if I can draw you a little picture, it will look something like this. there are like 3 circles, right, that converges. The what, the how, and the why. These 3, when it finds convergence, it will be very powerful. You get really long-term sustainable change, and I totally agree with you that many times we may not start. I know that this Simon Sinek always says start with why lah. So everybody think that this is the only starting point. Not always true. There are times when we may start here, we may start here. But my point is ultimately all 3 must find convergence. Yeah, that's when a person is truly equipped and changed. Yeah, is when all 3 finds convergence. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. So if you start with the what or start with the how, make sure that you bring in the why at some point. Same with all the rest. You can actually know a lot of why you should do why you should do that, and still not do it, because you don't know how to do it. Yeah, so all 3 must find convergence. So this has to do with, this is about teaching. This is about mentoring. And this is about coaching. Make sense? Yeah. So if you, so there are times when people come to church and all they get is teaching first. So they know what is it all about. But let's say they know that, evangelism is about sharing the gospel with others. But until they know why, they may not actually go and do it. Because the lostness of man, hell is real, they have the why. But in the end, someone has to teach them this is how you do it. Go knock on doors, and you do this, do that, and then you get the whole thing. And then all 3 come together, the person is truly equipped. Now he's totally changed. Yeah. So, very good question. Thank you for asking. So don't always need to stick to one. These are just frameworks. They help us to hang our thoughts, but they're not always so neat. Sometimes, we may start here. Like with children, oftentimes we start here, but make sure that you actually shoot for orientation, or else one day when they grow up, they will stop doing it. Good. Yeah, go for it.
Gonna ask a very hard question. So, Pastor
Yeah,
Benny, can
Pastor
you
is
share?
here, no worries.
Yeah, I agree about spiritual orientation, and if you could share 1 or 2 of your own experiences, how did you journey with someone, or example? Because in the spiritual orientation, it's very difficult. I don't think you can convince or persuade. But what in your mentoring experience, or what has a mentor said or done for you that helped you reach a change spiritually that you were not able to do on your own with God?
Yeah, when I was, I grew up in a church where my pastor taught me that if you take care of God's work, God will take care of your family. You take care of God's business, God will take care of your business. So because of that, we always believe that my most important thing is ministry. That's what I need to focus on. Then God will take care of my family. And I grew up that way. But I later got to know a navigator brother from America. So he was the one who helped me to have a change in my orientation, that I'm responsible for my family too. It's not just you take care of God's business, then God will take care of your business. Not quite like that. I'm responsible, And it was him who helped me, who put his finger in that area of my life. And the way he did it was very subtle. He did not just come and whack me, or quote the Bible totally all the time at me. What he did was he told me stories. He just tell me stories. Every time we meet, we talk about all kinds. I'll ask him a lot of questions about ministry and all of that. But at the end, just before he leave, he'll always tell me a story about his family. So one time he would just tell me something, you know, Benny, I just had a call this morning from my son. You know, my son is 30 over years old now. He's an elder in a church in America. And my son called us just to let us know how grateful he is that we were around for him when he was growing up. Then he said, I just want to let you know. And he keeps telling me things like that. And what he was doing is actually he's putting his finger on my jugular vein, you know. He's putting his finger there and he's trying to help me to see. And as I begin to reflect more and more on what he's saying, I reached a point where I begin to question my own value with regards to balancing my family and my ministry. And that was when he started to tell me directly that, yeah, you know, the Lord is working in your life. He's putting his finger in this area. Then he tell me, that's when he start quoting Bible at me and all of that. But I was more ready by that time. So it is in storytelling. It is in journeying with someone, putting your finger there and not letting go that I think he helped me to change. And by then, I think I experienced a real value change. But it took quite late. By then, I was already in my 40s. So my children will pay a price for that. So not too late, I have to salvage it. And so that's when I start to change my own orientation. So I think the example, you get my point, is a journey, but he was putting his finger in my orientation. More than just telling me, hey, you should spend more time with your children. Not quite like that. He just tell me stories and then slowly put his finger there. Until I could see for myself. So master the art of telling stories to your cell members. That's where the power of testimonies and all that really come in. We share life. Yeah, share life. Very good. Thank you for that. Very insightful question. Excellent. Yeah, go for it.
Hi, Pastor Benny. Just a related question.
Yeah.
Also on spiritual orientation. I guess, how can we grow in spiritual discernment? Because sometimes with our mentees, we are so distracted by certain issues that we don't realize it's a spiritual problem. And how can we grow in spiritual discernment? Because honestly, sometimes I'm really quite blur.
Yeah. Spiritual discernment. Very good. I suppose if we, apart from praying for them and hearing from the Lord, the interaction we have with our members and asking those probing questions really help us to get to the bottom of why they are doing what they're doing. And to get to the why question, I think is what we are shooting for. Because it will draw out from them what is really going on. It helps you your own sensing of what's going on in that person's life. Yeah, I think that's ask the why question. Ask the why question. Keep asking, and then I think it will come up. And as long as we are listening, people will slowly tell you what is really going on in their life. So I would think ask the why question is a good way of getting deeper in the conversation.
Pastor Benny,
okay.
can I ask a question?
Yeah. Maybe before I forget, just to add to that question about the discernment partner, I just give you a quick framework so that you could use it as a tool. Sometimes in seeking to get to the bottom of something, it's actually good to the keys in the questions, right, that we ask. And there is the way that people communicate, there are different levels, and how we all start is usually, there are 5 levels that I want to quickly outline for you. Pleasantries and niceties is everybody's communication starting point. That means, hi, how are you? Are you good? Things like that. They're actually nothing. They're just pleasant things that we say to each other, nice things that we say to each other. But nonetheless, it is level 1 of communication, because If I don't even say hi, I don't even ask you how are you, you'll be very offended also, right? So it's important there are pleasantries and niceties. But after we get past this, usually people will end up talking facts and information. That's another one. We begin to exchange facts and information. So what's happening, what I did last week, what you did last week, that's facts and information. But after that, if you really want to go deeper, we should start asking people for their opinions and judgments. What do you think about that? You know what I mean? Now we are asking them for their opinions and judgment. The moment you do that, right, the conversation has gone a bit deeper because now you're asking people to attach their judgment or their opinion to something. And once you do that, you are directly involved already because I can disagree with you. Or you can be judged for what you are thinking, right? Facts and information is very nothing. I just tell you what happened, that's all. But this one, a bit of me is involved in it. But what's more important is go to the next level, which is feelings and emotion. Feelings and emotion is a lot more deeper now because that's where they're beginning to unveil a bit about themselves. And most of our conversation, usually for men, it just stops here. It's always what you think, this is what I think, this is what you think, this is what you think. But only for women, they are much better. They can go to feelings and emotion quite quickly. So how do you feel about that? Wow, then lai liao. Everything, they will come out already. But we tend to stop here as men. And that's why it's very hard to have deep conversation with brothers, until you break out. Then you really get into asking the feeling question. And this is where, beyond that, right, you go to what people call maximum truth. Maximum truth is where we start to affirm one another. You start to correct one another. You start to be able to really share what is really deep inside. That I'm hurt, or I really am offended by what you just said. Maximum truth. That's where we unmask. And most of our conversation just need to be able to get to this level. That's when the real thing all start to come out. And if the Lord, and with the Holy Spirit's guidance, the key to bring conversations deeper and deeper and deeper, I think, is the questions we ask. Ask the right question and it'll take you to the next level down. So as a little framework to help you in case you are thinking along those lines. I find cell groups, leaders need some of this so that we can have some framework in which we can bring our conversations deeper. Don't get stuck in level 3 and 4 all the time. Take it a bit deeper. It'll be helpful. I hope that helps, brother. Okay.
Pastor Benny, my question is there a difference between mentoring and disciple making or discipleship? As you explain these, it sounds almost the same, because you're going down into the spiritual orientation and value change of a person. Yeah. So that's one question. And the other one is there a space for technical mentoring? For example, you just mentor someone to lead worship better, to lead a discussion better. So it's very specific, right, which may be just the accountable actions.
So yours is, what you're talking about is coaching. You're actually, coaching focus on skills. So you're actually helping a person to develop certain skills to help them in the ministry or something like that. So like leading worship or leading a prayer meeting, those are all quite skill-based. But in mentoring of the inner life, we are not dealing with skills on the outside. We're dealing with the attitude in which they do their ministry on the inside. Okay, but in an actual mentoring relationship within the context of ministry, sometimes the two can come together. Yeah, so say I'm a worship pastor, I don't just want my worship team all to be able to lead worship well. I think I also want to make sure that they do it with the right heart. So there is both involved. Coaching as well as mentoring are involved. Yeah. And so value change will have to happen in that setting as well. Yeah.
So is there a difference between discipleship?
Okay. Difference between discipleship and mentoring. And a lot of it is terminologies, I find. It's just terminologies. So within different churches, they kind of use it differently. So in our setting, where my own church, I try to make discipleship a broader thing. That means everything we do in church disciples our people, make them a better follower of Christ. If not, why do what you do, right? Everything you do in church, whether it's running a cell group or opening up ministry opportunities, going on mission trips, they are all part of the discipleship journey that our people need to go on. But I keep mentoring closer to leadership development. Just for clarity, so that we don't get confused by the two terms. So whenever we talk mentoring, we are talking about leadership development. Whenever we talk discipleship, it's everything we do in church. I hope that clarifies. But again, it's very church to church. So every church will have their own way of looking at this. You might want to, Pastor may be able to give more insight into how you all see that, whether there is a difference between the two. But for us, we see it that way. So our discipleship process simply looks something like this. So this is the discipleship journey that every believer is, where whoever joins the church is invited to go on this discipleship journey with us. And in the journey, we have a few processes: get people connected, get people equipped, get people mentored. But for what? Is so that ultimately everyone can be released to make a difference in this broken world. Yeah. So everyone that comes, we want make sure that they get connected, they get equipped, they get mentored, and all these are part of the discipleship journey. But mentoring is primarily for the purpose of developing leaders. And we mentor, so we will care for everyone. We try to equip as many as are willing, but only mentor a few. So that's how we try to bring some clarity to this. By the way, mentoring, this word is not a biblical word. You will not find it in the Bible. Discipleship is a biblical word. You'll find it in the Bible. Mentor is not. But the reason why I think mentoring is still good to use as a term in the church is simply because what has happened in the development of church life is that the world has taken a biblical idea. Biblical discipleship, Jesus style, is not Greek, it's Hebrew. And in the Greek world, everything is didactic, meaning like that. Someone talk, other people listen. That's the Greek world. The Hebrew world don't teach this way. They teach by doing life together. Does that make sense? How did Jesus disciple his disciples? He didn't actually do it purely through Sermon on the Mount. In fact, most of the time, he's taking his disciples, walking along the streets of Jerusalem, and then they walk past a temple. Some old lady throw 2 cents into the offering bag, and then Jesus said, this is a good time to teach them about giving. Then he turned to his disciples, see how the old lady give? Actually, she has given more than all these rich people put together. And then all the disciples will go, oh, they saw it. Then what were a few more steps? You see the Pharisee praying in the street corner. You see that guy there with ash all over his head? That's not how you should pray. When you pray, you should go into the closet when nobody sees. Then you pray in secret. The Lord will reward you in secret. Then they all go, oh, that's how they learn. Not classroom like that. So what has happened is that over the years, right, the church became more and more Greek, We became more and more didactic, more and more like that, classroom. In the meantime, the world took the Jesus model, coined a new term for it, call it mentoring. Take it in the marketplace. And then all of a sudden, you got mentors between senior lawyer, junior lawyer, mentoring within the trades. All this happened. But actually, it's a biblical idea. I hope you're following me. In the meantime, we have reduced discipleship to a booklet. And then we have 2-7 series and things like that. It become classroom and all. So that's how the word evolved. But it's okay to use it as long as you understand it's a biblical idea. Mentoring is a biblical idea. It's actually biblical discipleship. Put it that way. So that's how we see it. Okay, very good. Sorry, a long answer to a short question. Wonderful. You okay? Any other last question before I throw in something else? Any other questions, feedback, comments? Okay, if not, can I give you now 8 roles that mentors play so that you can, in the event where you manage to find your A's and B's, earlier we talked about the A's and the B's in your cell group, you can find them and you do spend some time with them. Here are 8 roles that mentors play. 8 simple things we all have to do as mentors. Number 1, you are an affirmer in times of uncertainty. Sorry, I cannot come out one at a time. So, or I can show you the whole thing first. You are a affirmer in times of uncertainty. There will be many times when our mentorees will go through moments of uncertainty. When they are not sure, go, don't go, do, don't do, they will come to you. And this is where you play the role of an affirmer, able to see what God is doing in their life and speak into it. You are an encourager in times of failures. Everyone will go through moments of failures. And it's not a bad thing because failure is not an end, it's an education. So if we are able to help them see perspective, you encourage during this time. The word encourage is a compound word, and, which means in, then courage. Entrance, entry is in, and courage. So in other words, there are times when our mentorees run out of courage. No more courage. So what do? They come to you as a mentor. We pump courage into them. That's what we all do. Right? We encourage them. You are a friend in times of sorrow. There will be times when we have to let them cry over your shoulders. It's totally okay. Okay. Motivator in times of challenges. So this is where, if you are trying to get more leaders, your A's and B's need to be challenged. And hey, leadership is good. Leadership is not a saman, it's actually a good thing. It's a privilege to be able to serve. So we challenge them in terms of when they need to be challenged, you motivate them. You are a guide in terms of decision making. We all have to learn to do that. We are a light in terms of integrity. When it's time to model integrity, we need to be a light for them to see. A model in terms of devotion. There's one area every one of our members will struggle with, maintaining a meaningful devotional life. So we model that for them. And don't forget, finally, you have to be a confronter in times of correction. When they make mistake, don't be afraid to actually speak into their life. There are times when you need... I put confronter right at the bottom because if you haven't been the first 7 to them, then you don't earn the right to confront them. I always think that a mentor is a head, a shoulder, and a foot. You must be a head for them, a source of wisdom for them to pick on. You must be a shoulder for them to cry on, and then you earn the right to kick them in the butt when they need to be kicked. Okay, but if you always kick butt without being a source of wisdom and comfort, then not very good. So be sure that you be the wisdom and the shoulder to cry on first. Then you earn the right to confront. Okay, so these are roles that every mentor will have to play along the way. All right. Is that okay? Just keep that so that you have a little guide when it comes to your role. Okay, I'll leave you one last thing before you can share with me whatever's on your heart. Here is what I would call the anatomy of a mentoring session. So in case you do find a few people in your cell who's willing to sit down with you and be guided and be mentored, can I give you... These are a few things you do in the mentoring session. And I would say this whole thing will last about 1 hour and 20 minutes, around there. 1 hour, 20 minutes, okay? So what do you actually do in the actual one-on-one, 1-to-2, 1-to-3 meeting? Number one is I typically like to do this. When I meet up with my mentorees, first thing I sit down, we chit-chat for a while, 5 minutes. The moment 5-10 minutes is over, I want to be able to say, okay, come, let's start, you know. I don't want it to become just a chit-chat, coffee shop thing, you know. We want to stay focused on our learning agreement. So number one is I will then say, okay, let's pray. So I always use prayer to set the tone. Now the reason is because I begin with prayer, not because it's not like it's the typical thing to do. It's not a cursory thing. But I think we want to remind ourselves that we are here not just for a meeting of minds, but it's a meeting of spirit. So we introduce God into the picture. And I will have prayer to set the tone. Then usually I try to make use of my own gifting as a Bible teacher. I like to frame what we are discussing, whatever the mentoring issue is. I try to frame it in scriptures. I'm just using my strength to do that. If that's your strength, go for it. If that's not, it's okay. But remember, if that's your strength, don't go too long. I will just give 5 minutes to bring out a scripture and then frame our discussion around so that we can kick off, have our heads wrapped around scriptures. Okay. Then after that, 5-10 minutes, we talk about the word and all that. Then I like to review. I will refer back to previous session. The last time we met, this is what we talked about. And today I've given you this scripture. Now we can take it from here. Does that make sense? I try to review back just to get further thoughts on it. Okay, and it's a good time to find out, since the last time we talked about it, have you done anything? Has application taken place and what was the outcome? Okay, and this is a good time also to check up on things that we perhaps have asked them to do between then and now. So it's good to review. And then number 4, the next thing I would like to do is listen to clarify the need. Because once you ask them what has happened since the last time we met, they will tell you many things has happened. So listen so that you can clarify the needs. Ask the leading question. Go through ask the right question to bring them deeper into what's happening, okay, into their journey. And then after you have really listened, then you can respond to meet the need. And this is the part where you affirm, where progress is made. You challenge if they need to go beyond. This is where you encourage if they have failed. You confront where it is needed. Okay, so that's what I would do with that part. Respond, meet the needs. And I like to make it a point to always leave some handles to help the mentoree. I usually do go prepared to, if I had the time to prepare for it, I would have prepared something to leave behind for the mentoree, to help him grow in that whatever the area is. So for me, I like to give frameworks. So I would craft things that I will pass on to them and then walk them through it and pass it on to them. Yeah, so I like to leave some handles behind. So typically, when I get to that point, I will just turn to the we would have finished talking about whatever is happening in his life and all that. I would then turn to him and say, okay, 1 for the road. And then I'll give them a framework. Here are 3 things or 4 ideas, something like that, and I'll pass them this framework. I find that important because most mentorees like to feel that if I come and spend time with you, I actually will go home feeling like I have gained something. And then they will look forward to the next session as a result. Okay, then once that is done, then number 7, I try to project a little bit to map the next step. Okay, so the next time we meet, I think we can talk a little bit more about this or about that. So I'm giving them an idea about what's coming up next. Then if there's something I would like them to think about or to reflect on or to read, I will tell them at this point to project for the next meeting. Then finally, we'll close. And this is the part where I don't just want to pray for them, but I would invite them to pray for me as well. So in that way, I think it becomes a mutual relationship, and we can grow together. So that's what I would typically do in a mentoring session, and it should last about 1 hour and 20 minutes if you are not too long-winded. Yeah, if not, 1 hour and a half. So if you don't know how you can conduct one, actually not that difficult. It's very simple. Yeah, everyone can do it. Yeah. So let's take away the don't worry too much. Oh, it's such a high and mighty thing, to mentor people. I don't think so. It's just journeying with someone through their season of their life. That's all. So don't be intimidated by the word mentor. You go and check the dictionary. It simply means this: someone who models for you an area of strength. That's all. Okay, is that okay? Helpful? You can take the framework and then tweak it the way you like and then use it and see how. Try it once or twice and then after that you find that it's okay. It's not so bad. And now. Okay, great. All good? Okay. Where do we go from here? I'll just leave you some final thoughts on where do we go from here. And then I'd love for you to have a time just to finish up and reflect on this. Okay, where do we go from here now? Now that if let's say you already have that desire to see mentoring being done within the church, then I think we need to ask ourselves, where do we go from here? I remember when I was about to leave for Perth in the year 2000, I met one of my mentors for the last time at the airport because I was going to go to Perth and Dwight was about to go back to US because his family is crying out for him. All his grandchildren were growing up and they're asking for granddad. So he was going to pack up, go back to America. So we met for the final time at the airport. And I remember the last thing he said to me at the airport was this. He said, Benny, when you get to Perth, don't start a discipleship program. I said, I'm supposed to go there to help the church, start a discipleship program. So then what do? He said, no, don't start a discipleship program, but this is what you do. Take a few good men, and then you can start a movement. Take a few good men, pour your life into them, and then you can start a movement. So don't rush to go and start a program, but take a few good people and then spend time with them and disciple them first. And then it might become a movement. And then I thought about it, I think he's right. That's exactly what Jesus did, isn't it? He started the church by taking a few good men, then he poured himself into them. And that was the start of what we see today all across the world. And I think there's no running away from this. That maybe if every one of us in our cell groups and all that would pick one or two good people, then we just do first. Just start with whatever we know and just start spending time. Ron Blue Davis, I think his name was, he made a statement on mentoring that I have held as a philosophy. The statement goes like this: more time spent with fewer people equal greater lasting impact for God. It's a simple idea. More time spent with fewer people equal greater lasting impact for God. And that's what Jesus did. He preached to the masses, but he only spent time with 70 who are his disciples that he sent out 2 by 2, right? Out of the 70, he had 12 that he designated apostles. Out of the 12, he has 3 that was in his inner circle, Peter, James, and John. Out of the 3, he had 1 who was his spiritual son that ended up writing the book of Revelation. Right? What is that? More time spent with fewer people equal greater lasting impact for God. I think that's the spirit behind mentoring. So if every one of us can just do that, we find 1 or 2 from our cell group and we start spending time with them, I think we can change the whole church a bit at a time. Yeah. So I think that will be a great starting point. Yeah. So dream big, start small. Then we build deeper. Then we see where the Lord would take us. And if you think in terms of leadership development, which I think every church would be looking for more leaders, remember that leadership development does take time. So we have to give it the time needed. It takes years to get an oak tree if you want something overnight, you must settle for a mushroom, so that's how it is. There's no running away from it. So we must be willing to invest the time and the effort to grow our next generation. So have the foresight to catch the vision of people development. So we don't just engage in the ministry, but let's empower the next generation and see where that goes. Follow the Chinese saying, if you're planting for a year, you plant grain. If you're planting for a decade, you plant trees. You are planting for a century, you plant people. So we develop the people one at a time, bit at a time. And I think we will see more leaders come out in Living Sanctuary. Amen. I hope you catch the spirit of mentoring. The greatest mentor any one of us can look to, our Lord Jesus. He did it so well. So we learn from it. Amen. Shall we have a word of prayer? And then thank you, Lord. Why don't we all stand together and let's look to the Lord in this area, that God will help us develop, grow leaders everywhere, that we will see our people being discipled, mentored from the inside out. Father, it is our desire to see men and women that you bless us with in this congregation grow and mature from strength to strength. Help every one of us to build disciples and mentorees from the inside out. May all of our inner compass be calibrated to who you are and what you say. And then, Lord, help us to really shoot for value change in all of our mentoring. And may each one that we journey with end up with true value change from the inside out, so that their lives can be truly transformed. Not just in terms of action, but also in terms of their attitude, so that they all become men and women who are Christ-like. So we give you all the glory for this. Help us as we seek to journey in building a mentoring culture within the church. In Jesus' wonderful name we pray. Amen. 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 Thank you for spending the time with me. And I wonder if you anything else you would like to do, Auntie Ruth? No? Okay. All right.